Tonight we are standing beside a dark and restless sea. The moon hangs low above the water. Silver light trembles across the waves. Far out in the distance, where the sea meets the night sky, there is only mystery. The wind carries the scent of salt and wet stone. Waves strike unseen cliffs. Somewhere beyond those cliffs, hidden from mortal eyes, a story is beginning. It is the story of a god who would command storms, shatter mountains, and rule every ocean beneath the heavens. Yet it is also the story of a god who would never become king. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all. Before we follow that mystery into the ancient world, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy exploring these ancient stories together. And if you feel comfortable, share your location and local time in the comments below. It is always fascinating to see where in the world these quiet journeys are being heard. Now let the noise of the modern world drift away. Listen instead to distant waves, to sea winds moving across forgotten shores, to echoes from an age when gods walked among mountains and stars, long before sailors called upon Poseidon for safe passage, before kings raised temples in his honor, before his trident became a symbol recognized across the ancient Mediterranean. There was only fear. Fear ruled the universe. At the center of that fear stood a titan named Cronus. He was lord of the cosmos before the Olympian gods existed. He sat upon a throne won through rebellion. Yet victory had brought him no peace. A prophecy haunted him. It arrived like distant thunder. One day he would be overthrown by one of his own children. The warning was simple. The warning was unavoidable. And the warning terrified him. You can almost imagine the silence that followed. A ruler who possesses absolute power fears only one thing: losing it. So Cronus made a choice that would shape the fate of every god who came after him. Whenever one of his children was born, he swallowed them. No sword, no battle, no trial, only darkness. One by one they vanished. The infant Hestia, then Demeter, then Hera, then Hades. And then came another child, Poseidon, the future lord of the sea, the future earthshaker, the future creator of storms. Yet at that moment he was only an infant, small, helpless, silent. Ancient poets describe the scene differently. Some traditions claim Cronus swallowed him immediately, just as he had swallowed the others. But another tradition survives. In this version, Poseidon's mother Rhea could no longer endure the loss of her children. She devised a desperate plan. Instead of surrendering the newborn Poseidon, she hid him. Some stories claim she concealed him among shepherds. Others place him beside mysterious sea spirits. A few ancient sources suggest he was hidden among lambs, disguised from the eyes of the fearful Titan king. Historians continue to debate which tradition emerged first. No one can know with certainty, yet perhaps that uncertainty is part of the story's power, because Poseidon's life would always be surrounded by hidden depths. Even his earliest moments remain partially concealed beneath the waters of myth. Imagine Rhea holding the child, the night air cool against her skin, the scent of earth after rain, the distant sound of waves rolling against shorelines. Every choice she makes carries enormous risk. If Cronus discovers the deception, everything is lost. Yet she proceeds anyway. Love is stronger than fear. At least for one night, the child survives. And somewhere beyond the awareness of the Titan King, destiny quietly changes direction. Years pass. The universe remains under Cronus's rule. Mountains rise beneath his authority. Rivers flow through lands shaped by his power. Sacred fires burn. Stars wheel across the heavens. Yet hidden beneath the surface of events, another story is unfolding. Poseidon grows, not openly, not triumphantly, but patiently, like a current moving beneath calm water. Ancient storytellers often connected Poseidon with forces that cannot easily be seen. Underground springs, earthquakes hidden beneath the soil, ocean currents moving beneath ships. Perhaps this symbolism begins here. Even as a child, he exists beyond ordinary sight. A hidden force awaiting its moment, and yet destiny remains uncertain, because another child will soon be born, a younger brother, one whose name will become famous throughout the ancient world: Zeus. Unlike Poseidon, Zeus is raised in secret on the island of Crete, protected by nymphs, hidden from Cronus, guarded by loyal companions. As Zeus grows stronger, whispers begin to spread. Some say strange omens appear. Others claim eagles circle sacred peaks. A few traditions speak of prophetic dreams disturbing priests and seers. The signs are never entirely clear. Ancient prophecies rarely are, but they all suggest the same possibility. Change is coming. For Poseidon, these developments create a future he cannot yet understand. He has survived. That alone is remarkable. Yet survival is only the beginning. Soon he will face war. Soon he will stand beside brothers he barely knows. Soon he will help overthrow the most powerful ruler in existence. And beyond that victory waits another challenge. A quieter challenge. A more painful one. Because defeating a tyrant is one thing. Accepting another ruler is something else entirely. The sea beyond the shore grows darker. Clouds drift across the moon. The waves continue their endless rhythm. And somewhere within the hidden currents of fate, the future lord of the oceans moves steadily toward the destiny that awaits him. Yet neither Poseidon nor anyone else can see where that path will finally lead. For beyond the fall of Cronus, another question is already waiting. Why would one brother become king, while another never could? But the answer remains far beyond the horizon. For now, the sea is calm tonight. Moonlight stretches across the water like a path made of silver. You stand upon a lonely shoreline where waves arrive in gentle rhythms one after another, as though the world itself is breathing. The storm has not yet come, but change is approaching. Far away, hidden beyond mountains and forests, beyond sacred caves and forgotten valleys, the young gods are moving toward a future none of them fully understand. Poseidon has survived infancy. That alone places him among the fortunate. Many stories end before they truly begin. His did not. Yet survival does not answer the deeper question. Who is Poseidon becoming? The answer remains uncertain. Even the ancient Greeks preserved different memories of these early years. Some traditions suggest Poseidon spent his youth among mysterious guardians connected to the sea. Others place him among humble shepherds living beneath open skies. A few stories claim he learned from ancient sea spirits long before he claimed his kingdom. The details shift like water. The feeling remains the same. Poseidon grows up far from power, far from thrones, far from certainty. And perhaps those years leave deeper marks than later victories ever will. Because children who grow up in safety often see the world differently from children who grow up beneath a shadow. The shadow in Poseidon's life has a name, Cronus. Even when the Titan King cannot see him, his presence remains, like distant thunder beyond the horizon. Like a storm still hidden behind clouds, every whispered warning carries the same message. Stay hidden, stay silent, stay alive. The young Poseidon learns patience. Not because he wishes to, because he must. Yet there are signs that something unusual lives within him. Ancient myths often connect him with horses long before they connect him with the sea. This detail has puzzled historians for generations. Why would the future god of oceans possess such a strong relationship with horses? Some researchers believe Poseidon may have originated as an older deity associated with both horses and earthquakes. Another interpretation survives in which these symbols reflect untamed energy itself. Speed, strength, movement, power that refuses confinement. Whatever the explanation, the symbolism feels fitting. Even as a child, Poseidon seems restless. He belongs nowhere completely. Not among mortals, not yet among gods, not yet among rulers. You can imagine him standing beside a rocky coastline, the wind tugging at his hair, salt lingering in the air, watching waves crash endlessly against stone. Something about the sea speaks to him, not in words, in feelings, in instincts, as though a forgotten part of himself already recognizes its future home. Yet another destiny is taking shape elsewhere. Far away on Crete, Zeus grows stronger. Night after night he trains. Year after year he waits, protected from Cronus, hidden from discovery, preparing for a confrontation that seems impossible. The stories surrounding Zeus's youth are filled with omens. One tradition speaks of an eagle appearing repeatedly above sacred mountains. Another tells of prophetic dreams seen by wandering seers. A third claims strange weather patterns unsettled the island. No one knows whether such signs truly belong to ancient beliefs or later storytelling. Yet they reveal something important. The universe itself seems restless, the old order is weakening, and somewhere beneath that shifting reality, the young gods are being drawn together. Eventually, the moment arrives. Zeus is no longer a child. The time for hiding has ended. The time for action has begun. Ancient storytellers describe this turning point with dramatic imagery. Torchlight flickering against cave walls, mountain winds carrying prayers, sacred fires burning through the night. You can almost hear the tension. The world stands between two ages. One must end before another can begin. Zeus begins his challenge against Cronus. Through trickery, wisdom, and courage, he forces the Titan King to release the children he swallowed long ago. One by one they emerge. The lost gods return. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Imagine that moment. the first breath of freedom, the first glimpse of open sky, the first sensation of sunlight after unimaginable darkness. Ancient myths rarely describe how the siblings felt, yet it is difficult not to wonder. Relief, confusion, joy, anger, perhaps all at once. Freedom often arrives carrying complicated emotions, especially when it has been delayed for so long. For Poseidon, another challenge appears immediately. He now has brothers, not distant figures, not legends, real brothers. One is Hades, quiet, thoughtful, often misunderstood. The other is Zeus, charismatic, confident, already drawing attention wherever he goes. Their relationships begin cautiously. They share blood. They share suffering. Yet they barely know one another. Trust takes time, especially among future rulers. The three brothers quickly discover important differences. Hades prefers reflection. Zeus embraces leadership. Poseidon stands somewhere between them. He possesses courage. He possesses strength. Yet he also carries a fierce pride, a desire not merely to participate in events, but to matter within them. This desire will shape much of his life. Again and again it will influence his choices. Again and again it will bring both success and disappointment. One evening, according to a lesser-known tradition, a wandering prophet is said to have spoken near a sacred fire. Whether the story reflects ancient belief or later imagination remains uncertain. The prophet's words survive only in fragments, yet their meaning is intriguing. 3 brothers would inherit the world. 3 brothers would rule, but only one would wear the highest crown. No names were given, no explanations offered. Only a warning: destiny does not divide rewards equally. Perhaps the prophecy never happened. Perhaps it did. Ancient traditions often preserve deeper truths through symbolic stories. What matters is not whether every detail occurred. What matters is what the story reveals. Even before the Great War begins, fate may already be moving toward its conclusion. The brothers cannot see it. Poseidon certainly cannot. He sees only opportunity, the chance to defeat Cronus, the chance to reclaim what was stolen, the chance to help build a new world. And so he follows Zeus into conflict. The decision seems obvious, yet every future consequence grows from this moment. Every victory, every rivalry, every disappointment, every triumph. The path begins here, beneath starlit skies, beside sacred fires, among siblings who are only beginning to understand one another. Ahead lies the greatest war mythology has ever imagined. The Titans still rule. Cronus still sits upon his throne. The universe still belongs to the old powers. For now. But tonight, as waves whisper against the shore, another feeling drifts through the darkness. Expectation. The young Poseidon has survived fear. He has found his family. He has stepped into destiny's current. Soon he will discover whether strength alone can reshape the cosmos. And somewhere beyond the coming war, hidden from every god alive, fate is already preparing a test far more personal than any battlefield. A test that will determine not what Poseidon can conquer, but what he can never possess. The night grows deeper. Clouds drift across the stars. The sea that seemed peaceful only moments ago now carries a darker mood. Waves strike the shore with greater force. The wind smells of rain and distant thunder. You stand at the edge of a world preparing for war. Not a war between cities, not a war between kings, a war between generations. A war that will decide who rules existence itself. For Poseidon, everything that follows begins with a simple truth. Freedom is not enough. The Titans still reign. Cronus still commands unimaginable power. The old order remains standing. And as long as it remains, neither Poseidon nor his siblings can truly be safe. The choice before them is clear. Fight, or return to fear. So the young gods choose war. Ancient poets later called this conflict the Titanomachy, the War of the Titans. Yet the name alone cannot capture its scale. Imagine mountains trembling beneath colossal footsteps. Imagine valleys illuminated by divine fire. Imagine oceans churning beneath storms created by immortal powers. The universe itself becomes a battlefield. Poseidon enters this struggle beside Zeus and Hades. The 3 brothers stand united. For perhaps the first time in their lives, they share a common purpose. Not power, not ambition, survival. And in those early days of war, the bond between them grows stronger than it will ever be again. You can almost picture them gathered around sacred flames at night, the scent of smoke drifting into cool air, the distant rumble of battle echoing across dark hills. No one knows how long the war will last. No one knows who will survive. Even gods face uncertainty, especially young gods. The Titans possess overwhelming strength. Cronus is not alone. Many ancient powers remain loyal to him. These beings belong to an older world, a world that existed before Olympus, a world shaped by primordial forces. Against such enemies, courage alone is not enough. The Olympians need allies, and so Zeus makes one of the most important decisions of the war. He descends into the depths of Tartarus. Ancient Greece imagined Tartarus as a place beyond ordinary darkness, deeper than the underworld, far below the lands of mortals, a realm where forgotten powers remained imprisoned. There Zeus frees the Cyclopes and the hundred-handed ones, gigantic beings abandoned by Cronus long ago. The decision changes everything, because gratitude soon becomes alliance, and alliance becomes victory. The Cyclopes forge gifts for the three brothers, weapons unlike anything the cosmos has seen before. For Zeus, they create the thunderbolt. For Hades, the helmet of invisibility. And for Poseidon, they create the trident. Few objects in mythology become as famous. Three gleaming prongs, a weapon connected to sea storm and earth, a symbol of authority, a symbol of power, a symbol of identity. The moment Poseidon receives it feels almost like a second birth. At last his destiny begins to reveal itself. The trident does not merely increase his strength, it defines it. Ancient traditions describe extraordinary abilities. With a strike of the weapon, springs burst from dry ground. With another strike, cliffs fracture. The earth itself responds. Some researchers believe these stories reflect ancient attempts to explain earthquakes. Others suggest deeper religious symbolism. The earth-shaking god represented forces hidden beneath the visible world. Either way, the meaning is clear. Poseidon is no longer simply one of Zeus's allies. He is becoming something unique, something powerful, something feared. The war intensifies. Year after year, battles rage across creation. Ancient myths often speak in grand images rather than precise details. Mountains hurled like weapons, flames stretching toward the stars, seas boiling beneath divine conflict. Perhaps these descriptions are exaggerated. Perhaps they were never intended as literal events. Yet they communicate an emotional truth. The struggle feels endless. Every victory brings another challenge. Every gain demands sacrifice. For Poseidon, these years are transformative. War reveals character. It strips away illusions. It forces choices, and each choice leaves a mark. You begin to see traits that will define him forever. Courage, determination, pride. He does not shrink from danger. He does not hesitate when action is required. Yet he also begins to enjoy power, not merely using it, possessing it. This distinction matters. At first it seems harmless. After all, confidence is useful in war. But confidence can slowly become ambition. And ambition can become something else entirely. The consequences of that transformation remain far in the future. For now, Poseidon fights. One story tells of him shattering Titan defenses with his trident. Another describes vast earthquakes disrupting enemy strongholds. Ancient storytellers clearly delighted in imagining the sea god's strength. Yet beneath these victories lies another emotion: hope. For the first time, Poseidon can envision a future. Not merely survival, a future. A place in the new world that will emerge after victory. A kingdom. A purpose. Perhaps even glory. Like many young warriors, he looks beyond the battlefield, toward what comes next. And perhaps that is where fate begins its quiet work. Because the future Poseidon imagines is not necessarily the future awaiting him. One night, according to a lesser-known tradition, strange signs appear in the heavens. A comet, or perhaps a blazing star. The accounts differ. Ancient observers often interpreted unusual celestial events as messages from divine powers. The meaning remains uncertain. Yet some later storytellers connected the omen to the coming end of the war. The old age was dying. A new age approached. No one knew exactly what shape it would take, not even the gods themselves. Finally, after years of struggle, the turning point arrives. The hundred-handed ones unleash devastating attacks against the Titans. The Olympian alliance presses forward. Cronus's power weakens. One by one, the old rulers fall. Victory becomes inevitable. Then reality shifts. The Titans are defeated. The war is over. Silence follows. Imagine that silence after years of thunder, after years of battle cries, after years of destruction. Only wind, only distant waves, only the realization that everything has changed. Poseidon stands among the victors. The impossible has happened. Cronus is gone. The old world has ended. The future now belongs to the Olympians. You might expect celebration, and there is celebration. Sacred fires burn. Voices rise beneath star-filled skies. Hope spreads through the cosmos. Yet hidden within victory lies a question no one has answered. Who will rule? The brothers fought together. The brothers sacrifice together. The brothers one together. But power rarely remains shared forever. Soon the universe must be divided. Soon kingdoms must be assigned. Soon destinies must be chosen. And although Poseidon cannot yet see it, the greatest disappointment of his life is already approaching, far beyond the celebrations, far beyond the triumph, far beyond the final echoes of war. Fate is quietly preparing the moment that will define everything that follows. The moment when the world is divided, and one brother receives the sky. The war is over. For the first time in many years, the cosmos is quiet. No mountains are being hurled through the sky. No divine armies clash beneath storms. No Titan banners rise against the horizon. Only the sound of waves remains. You stand beside a tranquil shore as dawn slowly approaches. Pale light spreads across the sea. The scent of salt drifts through the cool air. Far above the last stars linger for a few precious moments before surrendering to morning. The universe has survived its greatest conflict. Now comes a different challenge. Peace. Strangely, peace often proves more complicated than war. During war, the goal is clear. Defeat the enemy. Survive. Protect those beside you. But once victory arrives, new questions emerge. Who leads? Who governs? Who decides the future? These questions now face the three brothers. Zeus, Hades, Poseidon. Together they helped overthrow Cronus. Together they reshaped creation. Together they stand at the beginning of a new age. Yet they cannot remain equals forever. The universe is simply too vast. The ancient Greeks imagined creation as a collection of interconnected realms. The bright heavens above. The fertile earth beneath human feet. The endless sea surrounding every shore. The mysterious underworld hidden beyond mortal sight. Order must be established. Kingdoms must be assigned. Responsibilities must be divided. And so one of mythology's most important moments begins. Not with battle, with chance. According to the most familiar tradition, the brothers agree to cast lots. No swords are drawn. No armies gather. No challenge is issued. Instead, fate itself will decide. You can almost picture the scene. The morning air is cool. A sacred fire burns nearby. The sea moves gently beyond the rocks. Three brothers stand together, perhaps hopeful, perhaps anxious, perhaps pretending not to care. Yet each understands the significance of what is about to happen. Their entire futures rest upon a simple draw. Ancient storytellers rarely describe Poseidon's thoughts during this moment. But it is difficult not to wonder, what does he hope for? What does he fear? Does he dream of ruling Olympus? Does he imagine commanding the heavens? Or does he simply trust destiny? No surviving source provides certainty. The mystery remains. And perhaps that mystery matters, because moments like this often reveal the difference between fate and desire. The lots are cast. The results emerge. Zeus receives the sky. Hades receives the underworld. Poseidon receives the sea. At first glance, the division appears fair. Each brother gains a vast realm. Each becomes a ruler. Each possesses immense authority. The earth itself remains shared among them. No one leaves empty-handed. Yet appearances can be deceiving. You watch Poseidon gaze toward the horizon. The sea stretches endlessly before him, blue beyond measure, filled with hidden creatures, distant islands, and unexplored mysteries. It is a magnificent kingdom, perhaps the greatest kingdom imaginable. The oceans touch every shore. They connect every land. They shape the lives of countless mortals. The sea is beautiful. The sea is powerful. The sea is alive, and it belongs to him. Many gods would have been satisfied. Poseidon is not many gods, because there is one detail impossible to ignore. Olympus, the mountain where the gods gather, the center of divine authority, the symbolic heart of the new world. And above Olympus stands Zeus, king, not merely ruler of the sky, king. The distinction matters a great deal. Ancient Greek religion often portrays Zeus as first among the gods, the one who settles disputes, the one whose judgments carry final authority, the one whose throne stands highest. Poseidon gains a kingdom. Zeus gains a kingdom and a crown. The difference may seem small. In time, it will become enormous. At first, however, Poseidon appears content, and perhaps he genuinely is. There is much to admire in his new domain. Imagine descending beneath clear blue waters, sunlight filtering through shifting currents, schools of fish gliding through underwater valleys, coral formations glowing in vibrant colors, hidden caves filled with ancient secrets. The sea possesses wonders no mountain can offer. Poseidon's connection to this realm feels immediate, natural, almost inevitable. Some ancient traditions suggest he always belonged to the oceans. Others hint that destiny itself guided the outcome. Historians continue to debate whether Poseidon's association with the sea emerged before or after certain mythological developments. Yet within the stories themselves, the match feels perfect. The restless god receives the restless sea. The powerful god receives a powerful kingdom. The earth shaker finds a home among shifting tides. Still subtle tensions begin to appear, not openly, not dramatically, like distant clouds gathering beyond the horizon. The first signs emerge during assemblies of the gods. Olympus becomes the place where decisions are made. Olympus becomes the place where disputes are settled. Olympus becomes the center of divine life, and Zeus sits at its summit. Poseidon attends these gatherings. He is respected, honored, feared. No one doubts his importance. Yet importance is not the same as supremacy. The difference lingers. Perhaps only faintly at first, but it lingers. Ancient myths often portray Poseidon as a figure of immense pride. Not arrogance without reason. Pride rooted in genuine achievement. He helped win the war. He commands 1/3 of creation. He possesses strength rivaling almost any god. Why should he stand beneath another ruler? The question never entirely disappears. Whether Poseidon consciously asks it during these early years remains unknown. But later events suggest the feeling may already exist. Waiting. Growing. Patient as an incoming tide. One evening, according to an old tradition preserved in fragments, an unusual dream comes to a seer living beside the sea. The dream describes 3 crowns resting upon a stone altar. One shines brightly. One glows faintly. One slowly sinks beneath water. Interpretations vary. The story survives only in scattered forms. Yet ancient listeners would have recognized its symbolism immediately. Power does not always arrive equally, nor does recognition, even among gods. As the years pass, Poseidon throws himself into his responsibilities. He learns the rhythms of tides. He guides storms. He watches over sailors. He shapes coastlines and islands. The sea becomes more than a possession. It becomes part of his identity. Perhaps this is destiny's gift. Perhaps it is destiny's consolation. Because while Zeus rules Olympus, Poseidon rules something older, something deeper. The sea existed before cities, before temples, before kings. The sea remembers everything. Ancient Greeks understood this instinctively. Standing upon a shoreline, they could feel its immense age, its mystery, its unpredictability, and they saw those qualities reflected in Poseidon himself. Yet even as he embraces his kingdom, another truth quietly emerges. The sea grants freedom. The throne grants authority. Poseidon has gained the first. Zeus possesses the second. The consequences of that difference will unfold slowly. Years from now, resentment will surface. Years from now, rivalries will intensify. Years from now, choices will be made that neither brother can undo. For now, however, the world remains young. The Olympian age has only begun. The waves continue their endless song. Seabirds circle above bright waters, and Poseidon stands at the edge of his magnificent kingdom. Lord of oceans, master of storms, ruler of 1/3 of creation. Yet somewhere within the quiet depths of his heart, a question drifts like a shadow beneath the sea. What if fate could have chosen differently? The answer remains hidden, but destiny has already begun moving toward it. And far beyond the horizon, another challenge is waiting. A challenge that will transform Poseidon from ruler of the seas into one of the most feared gods in existence. The sea belongs to him now, not in theory, not in prophecy, in reality. You stand upon a high cliff overlooking dark blue waters. The afternoon sun glitters across countless waves. Far below, white foam gathers around black rocks before disappearing once more into the endless rhythm of the tide. The world is changing. The age of the Titans has passed. The age of the Olympians has begun, and Poseidon is no longer a hidden child, a survivor, or a warrior fighting for the future. He is a ruler. For many gods, that would be enough. For Poseidon, it is only the beginning. The sea stretches farther than the eye can see. Every coastline touches it. Every harbor depends upon it. Every sailor fears its moods. To govern such a realm requires more than strength. It requires presence. The ancient Greeks understood this deeply. When they looked across the Mediterranean, they did not see an empty expanse of water. They saw a living force, a road connecting distant worlds, a source of wealth, a source of danger, a mystery that could never be fully controlled. And behind that mystery stood Poseidon. His influence grows rapidly. Fishing villages whisper prayers before dawn. Merchants pour wine into the sea before long voyages. Captains lift their eyes toward the horizon and ask for favorable winds. The god's name spreads from island to island. across rocky coastlines, through crowded harbors, into distant colonies. Every wave seems to carry his reputation farther. Yet reputation is a strange thing. The more it grows, the more it shapes the one who receives it. Poseidon begins to understand something important. Mortals fear him, not merely respect him, fear him. That fear brings power, and power has a way of changing those who possess it. You can imagine him standing within a palace beneath the sea. Ancient storytellers described magnificent halls built from shining stone, columns rising from ocean floors, walls decorated with coral and gold, light filtering through clear water overhead, sea creatures gliding silently beyond great windows. The images are beautiful, almost dreamlike, yet beneath the beauty lies isolation. The sea is vast, so vast that even a god may feel alone within it. This loneliness rarely appears openly in myth. Ancient stories often prefer action to introspection, yet hints remain. Again and again Poseidon seeks recognition. Again and again he competes with others. Again and again he reacts strongly when overlooked. Such behavior often emerges from deeper emotions. Perhaps the sea gives him freedom, but freedom is not the same as companionship, nor is it the same as acknowledgement. Meanwhile, Zeus's authority continues to expand. Olympus becomes increasingly important. Gods gather there. Decisions are made there. Disputes are resolved there. The mountain grows into the symbolic center of divine life. And each time this happens, an uncomfortable reality becomes harder to ignore. Poseidon's kingdom may be enormous, yet Zeus remains king. The distinction still lingers, like a pebble inside a sandal. Small, but impossible to forget. To strengthen his position, Poseidon begins shaping the world itself. The sea alone is not enough. His influence extends inland. Ancient Greeks knew him not only as god of oceans, they knew him as the earthshaker, the one who commands earthquakes, the one whose power reaches beneath the ground. This aspect of Poseidon fascinated ancient worshippers. Earthquakes appeared suddenly, without warning, without explanation. The ground itself could betray those standing upon it. Entire cities might tremble, walls might crack, temples might collapse. To ancient minds, such events felt divine. Who else could move the earth? Poseidon's trident becomes central to these stories. One strike, the ground shakes. Another strike, springs emerge from stone. Another strike, mountains tremble. The symbolism is powerful. The sea god controls forces both above and below human awareness. The visible ocean, the hidden earth. Perhaps this dual nature explains part of his enduring appeal. He represents realities humans cannot master. The Greeks sailed upon waters they could not predict. They lived atop land they could not fully trust. Poseidon governed both. As his worship spreads, shrines begin appearing near coastlines. Sacred fires burn through the night. Offerings accumulate beside stone altars. Olive oil, wine, fish, small carved figures. The scent of incense drifts into sea air. The sound of prayers mingles with crashing waves. You can almost stand among those worshippers, listening, watching, hoping, because every sailor understands a simple truth. The sea owes no one mercy. A calm morning can become a deadly afternoon. Blue skies can vanish beneath black clouds. Friendly currents can become powerful enemies. Poseidon embodies that uncertainty, and uncertainty inspires devotion. One ancient tradition tells of a dream experienced by a priest living near the coast. Whether the story originated early or emerged centuries later remains uncertain. In the dream, a great horse rises from the sea. Its mane is made of foam. Its eyes shine like moonlight upon water. The creature gallops across the waves before disappearing into the horizon. When the priest awakens, he interprets the vision as a sign. Poseidon's influence is still growing. The horse carries deep symbolism. Ancient Greeks often connected horses with power, nobility, and divine energy. Poseidon himself becomes known as creator of the first horse in several traditions. Historians continue debating how this unusual connection developed. Yet within mythology, the relationship feels natural. Both horses and oceans possess freedom. Both resist complete control. Both inspire awe. And both reflect something essential within Poseidon's character. Power without stillness. Movement without rest. As the years pass, his confidence grows. Sometimes confidence becomes pride. The line between them is rarely obvious, especially to the person crossing it. Poseidon begins expecting recognition, expecting respect, expecting his authority to be acknowledged. Most of the time he receives it. Most gods avoid unnecessary conflict with him. Most mortals pray carefully. Most rulers remember their dependence upon the sea. But expectations create vulnerability, because once recognition becomes expected, Every denial feels personal. Every slight feels larger. Every disappointment cuts deeper. Poseidon does not yet realize this. He stands at the height of his rising influence. Temples spread. Stories spread. Fear spreads. His reputation grows with every passing season. From distant islands to busy ports, people speak his name with reverence. The Sea King appears unstoppable. Yet fate often hides its greatest lessons behind moments of success. Even now, another challenge is approaching. Not a war, not a rebellion. Something quieter, something more painful. A contest, a city, a rival unlike any he has ever faced. Far away beneath bright Attic skies, a rocky land awaits its protector. And when that moment arrives, Poseidon will discover that strength alone cannot win every victory. Sometimes wisdom proves more persuasive than power. But he has not learned that lesson yet. The waves continue rolling toward shore. The sea wind carries the scent of salt and distant rain. And somewhere beyond the horizon, destiny is preparing one of the most important disappointments of Poseidon's life. The morning sea is quiet. Soft mist drifts above the water. You stand beside a harbor where fishermen prepare their boats beneath a sky painted with pale gold and silver. Ropes creak gently. Seabirds circle overhead. The scent of salt olive oil and damp wood lingers in the cool air. For a moment, everything feels peaceful. It is easy to imagine Poseidon as a god of storms alone, a ruler of shipwrecks, a bringer of earthquakes, a force of destruction. Yet mythology often hides its most interesting truths beneath familiar images, because there is another side to Poseidon, a side that many modern listeners rarely encounter. The builder, the creator, the god who helps shape civilizations. As the years pass after the Titan War, the world enters a period of growth. Cities expand, harbors multiply, trade routes spread across the sea. Mortals push farther into unknown waters. Every voyage depends upon Poseidon. Every port exists because of him. Without the sea, many cities could never flourish. Without the sea god's favor, countless dreams would end before they began. The relationship between Poseidon and humanity becomes increasingly complex. People fear him, but they also need him, and perhaps that need appeals to something deep within his character. Because influence gained through terror is temporary. Influence gained through necessity is enduring. You can almost sense Poseidon recognizing this distinction. Slowly, his role begins to expand. Ancient myths preserve stories of the sea god assisting in the construction of remarkable places. One of the most famous traditions concerns the mighty walls of Troy. Long before the famous war that would one day destroy the city, Poseidon and Apollo are said to have labored together in service to its king. The story survives in several versions. As often happens in mythology, details vary, yet the central image remains, the sea god helping build enormous defensive walls. Stone upon stone, tower upon tower, a city rising toward greatness. At first glance, the story seems unusual. Why would an immortal ruler spend time constructing walls for mortals? Historians continue debating the deeper meaning. Some researchers believe such myths preserve memories of ancient engineering traditions. Others suggest symbolic interpretations. The gods were seen as forces behind civilization itself. Whatever the explanation, the story reveals something important about Poseidon. His power is not limited to destruction. He can create. He can strengthen. He can protect. This matters because it challenges the image many people hold of him. The sea destroys ships, but it also connects worlds. Earthquakes shatter cities, but the earth also provides foundations. Poseidon governs both sides of that balance. Creation and destruction, order and chaos. Throughout his life, he will move between them, sometimes gracefully, sometimes not. As his influence spreads, magnificent temples begin appearing along coastlines. Marble gleams beneath sunlight. Sacred fires burn within stone sanctuaries. Priests perform rituals while waves crash against nearby rocks. The sounds blend together, prayer and ocean, human devotion and natural power. The ancient Greeks often placed Poseidon's temples in locations where land and sea meet. The symbolism is beautiful. These sacred places stand between certainty and uncertainty, between stability and change, between civilization and wilderness, much like Poseidon himself. One evening, according to a lesser-known tradition, a sailor arrives at a coastal shrine carrying strange news. Far out at sea, he claims to have witnessed an unusual sight, a distant island rising from the water where none existed before. Others dismiss the story. Exhaustion, imagination, a trick of light. Yet the tale spreads, and eventually it becomes associated with Poseidon. the god who shapes landscapes, the god who raises islands, the god whose realm is never entirely fixed. Whether the event truly occurred hardly matters. The story reflects how people viewed him, not as a passive ruler, as an active force, a being constantly reshaping the world. Meanwhile, another development begins quietly within Poseidon's heart. Success brings satisfaction, but it also creates expectation. Each accomplishment reinforces his confidence. Each act of creation confirms his importance. Each temple reminds him how widely he is worshipped. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, a question emerges. Why should Zeus receive greater honor? The thought is still small, still manageable. Yet it appears more frequently. Poseidon does not voice it openly, not yet. Perhaps he barely acknowledges it himself. But it exists, a current beneath the surface. The same current that has followed him since the division of the universe. The sea kingdom is magnificent. Still, Olympus belongs to another. The comparison becomes difficult to avoid, especially during gatherings of the gods. You can imagine Poseidon ascending Olympus, passing marble columns, walking beneath banners fluttering in mountain winds, the scent of incense drifting through sacred halls. Every god present possesses power. Every god commands respect. Yet all eyes eventually turn toward Zeus, the king, the final authority, the ruler whose decisions shape divine affairs. Poseidon accepts this reality, but acceptance and comfort are not always the same thing. Ancient storytellers rarely portray Poseidon as naturally submissive. He values independence. He values strength. He values recognition. These qualities make him compelling. They also make him vulnerable to disappointment, and disappointment is approaching, though he cannot yet see it. One night, a mysterious dream appears in the traditions of several coastal communities. The details differ from place to place. In some versions, a great wave rises toward the stars. In others, a shining crown floats upon dark waters. Yet the ending remains consistent. The crown drifts just beyond reach. No matter how far the dreamer swims, ancient interpreters offered many explanations. Some believed it represented ambition. Others saw a warning against envy. No one knows the original meaning. Yet viewed through the lens of Poseidon's life, the symbolism feels striking. The closer he comes to greatness, the more visible the final distance becomes. Not distance from power, distance from supremacy. Still, these tensions remain largely hidden. For now, Poseidon continues building, creating, expanding. His reputation reaches new heights. Kings seek his favor. Cities honor him. Sailors trust him with their lives. The sea kingdom flourishes. And for a brief period, it almost seems as though everything is unfolding exactly as it should. But destiny often chooses unexpected moments to test pride. Not on battlefields, not during disasters, during competitions. Soon Poseidon will encounter a rival whose strength differs entirely from his own. A goddess who does not command oceans. A goddess who does not shake mountains. A goddess who fights with something far more difficult to overcome. Wisdom. Their contest will center upon a city. A city destined for greatness. A city whose choice will wound Poseidon more deeply than many wars. The waves continue their patient rhythm. The harbor fills with activity. The sun climbs higher above the sea. And somewhere beyond the horizon, a city waits to decide between two gods. A decision that will echo through the rest of Poseidon's life. The sea is restless tonight. A strong wind moves across the water, scattering silver reflections beneath the moon. Waves strike the harbor walls with steady force. Fishing boats sway gently at their moorings. Torches flicker along the shoreline, their golden light trembling against the darkness. You stand at the edge of a moment that will change Poseidon forever. Not because he will lose power, not because he will lose his kingdom, but because he will lose something more difficult to accept: recognition. For years, the sea god has watched his influence expand. Cities honor him. Sailors fear him. Kings seek his blessing. His temples rise beside coasts and harbors throughout the Greek world. His reputation feels unstoppable, and perhaps that is why the coming disappointment strikes so deeply. Success often teaches us to expect more success. Poseidon is no different. Far from the sea on the rugged land of Attica, a new city begins to emerge. The land is rocky. The soil is challenging. The summers are hot and dry. Yet there is potential there. Great potential. The settlement stands upon a sacred hill overlooking the surrounding countryside. In time, it will become one of the most famous cities in human history. But that future has not yet arrived. For now, it remains a city searching for a divine protector. The people face a choice. Which god should watch over their future? Which god deserves their loyalty? Which god offers the greatest gift? Two immortals answer the challenge: Poseidon and Athena. From the beginning, the contest feels symbolic, not merely a competition between gods, a competition between ideas, between different visions of greatness. Poseidon represents strength, power, dominion, the untamed energy of nature. Athena represents wisdom, strategy, craftsmanship, thoughtful progress. Both possess extraordinary gifts. Both deserve admiration, yet only one can claim the city. Ancient storytellers preserve several versions of what happened next. The details vary, as they often do, but the heart of the story remains remarkably consistent. The gods must present gifts, the people will choose. Simple. Yet destiny often hides within simple decisions. You can imagine the gathering, the sky bright above, citizens assembled upon the rocky hill, priests tending sacred fires, the scent of burning incense drifting through warm air, a feeling of anticipation spreading through the crowd. The future is about to be decided. Poseidon steps forward first, confident, powerful, certain of his worth. Why wouldn't he be? He commands oceans. He shapes coastlines. He can raise storms capable of swallowing entire fleets. His strength is undeniable. To demonstrate that strength, he strikes the earth with his trident. The impact echoes across the land. Stone cracks. The ground trembles. A miraculous gift appears. What exactly emerges depends on the tradition. Some stories say a spring bursts forth. Others describe a pool of water. A few versions claim the water is salty, reflecting its connection to the sea. Another tradition suggests Poseidon creates the first horse. Historians continue debating which version developed earliest. Perhaps multiple traditions existed simultaneously. Ancient myths rarely fit neatly into modern categories. Yet regardless of the details, the symbolism remains clear. Poseidon's gift reflects power, movement, strength, the ability to dominate nature. The crowd watches in awe. How could they not? The display is magnificent. The earth itself responds to his command. For a moment, victory seems likely. Then Athena steps forward. Unlike Poseidon, she does not shake the ground. She does not summon dramatic forces. Her gift appears modest by comparison. She plants an olive tree. At first glance, it seems almost unimpressive. A tree, nothing more. No earthquakes, no miracles, no overwhelming spectacle. Just a tree. Yet appearances can be deceptive. The olive tree offers food, oil, wood, shade, trade, prosperity. Generation after generation can benefit from it. Its value grows over time, slowly, patiently, like wisdom itself. The people consider both gifts, power or practicality, strength or sustainability. The decision is not easy, but eventually they choose. Athena wins. The city becomes hers. And from that day forward, it bears her name, Athens. The decision changes history. It also changes Poseidon. You can almost feel the silence that follows. The sea god has not been defeated in battle. No army has overcome him. No rival has challenged his strength. Instead, he has been judged and found lacking. That distinction matters. A warrior can recover from military defeat. A ruler can recover from political defeat. But a rejection of identity cuts deeper. The people have not merely chosen Athena's gift. They have chosen Athena's vision of the future. Wisdom over force. Patience over power. The lesson is difficult for Poseidon to accept. Ancient myths often describe his response as immediate anger. Storms rise. Floods threaten the land. The sea god's disappointment becomes impossible to ignore. Yet beneath the anger lies something more personal. Hurt, pride wounded by public rejection, perhaps even confusion. After all, from Poseidon's perspective, his gift was extraordinary. His power was real. His accomplishments were undeniable. Why was that not enough? The question lingers. It will continue lingering for centuries, because the contest for Athens reveals one of Poseidon's deepest struggles. He understands power instinctively. He understands force. He understands command. What he struggles to understand is why power alone cannot guarantee devotion. Athena offers something different, not dominance. Guidance, not fear, trust. The distinction shapes the outcome. Some researchers believe the myth preserves ancient cultural tensions, maritime traditions competing with agricultural ones, older forms of worship meeting newer values. Others view the story psychologically, a symbolic conflict between strength and wisdom within every human life. Perhaps both interpretations contain truth. Myths often survive because they speak on multiple levels at once. For Poseidon, however, the experience remains personal, very personal. The city he wanted now belongs to another. The glory he expected belongs to another. The honor he imagined belongs to another, and the consequences extend beyond Athens itself. The loss reinforces a feeling that has quietly followed him for years, the feeling of standing beside greatness rather than at its center. Zeus rules Olympus. Athena claims the city destined to become Greece's intellectual heart. Meanwhile, Poseidon remains immensely powerful, yet somehow still unsatisfied. The wound does not destroy him, but it leaves a mark, one that future events will deepen. As night falls over Attica, the newly chosen olive tree sways beneath the wind. Its leaves shimmer beneath moonlight. The city begins a future tied forever to Athena's name, and far away the sea god withdraws into his kingdom, still respected, still feared, still magnificent, yet carrying a disappointment that refuses to fade. For destiny has taught him an uncomfortable lesson. Not every contest can be won through strength, and not every crown belongs to the strongest claimant. The waves crash harder against the shore now. Clouds gather beyond the horizon, and somewhere within Poseidon's heart, a dangerous thought is beginning to grow. If wisdom can defeat strength, what happens when strength decides it no longer accepts the outcome? The answer waits among the halls of Olympus, and it will bring Poseidon into conflict with the very brother he once fought beside. The storm arrives before dawn. Dark clouds cover the stars. The sea churns beneath powerful winds. Waves crash against black cliffs, sending cold spray high into the air. Lightning flashes far across the horizon, illuminating the water for brief moments before darkness returns. You stand beside a restless ocean, the kind of ocean that seems to mirror a troubled mind. For many years, Poseidon has accepted the order established after the Titan War. Zeus rules the heavens. Hades governs the underworld. Poseidon commands the sea. The arrangement appears stable. The arrangement appears fair. Yet appearances often conceal deeper currents. The disappointment of Athens remains. The memory of Olympus remains. The knowledge that another brother occupies the highest throne remains. None of these feelings dominate Poseidon's life, but neither do they disappear. Like tides beneath the surface, they continue moving quietly through his thoughts. Ancient myths rarely portray resentment as something sudden. More often it grows slowly, fed by small frustrations, strengthened by repeated reminders. A single wave rarely reshapes a coastline. Thousands of waves can. Poseidon's relationship with Zeus follows a similar pattern. The brothers remain allies. They remain family. They remain among the most powerful beings in existence. Yet subtle tensions continue accumulating. Zeus grows increasingly secure in his authority. Olympus flourishes under his leadership. Gods seek his judgment. Mortals invoke his name. Kings pray for his favor. Every year seems to reinforce the same reality. The throne belongs to Zeus. For some gods, this inspires loyalty. For others, admiration. For Poseidon, the emotion is more complicated because he remembers the war. He remembers the sacrifices. He remembers standing beside Zeus as an equal. The memory never fully fades. You can imagine Poseidon walking through the halls of Olympus, marble gleaming beneath torchlight, golden decorations reflecting sacred fire, the scent of incense drifting through cool mountain air. Around him stand gods and goddesses of extraordinary power. Yet even here there is hierarchy. Every gathering eventually centers upon Zeus. Every decision ultimately passes through Zeus. Every dispute ends with Zeus. The symbolism is impossible to miss. Olympus is not merely a home. It is a kingdom. And kingdoms have kings. One evening, according to several traditions, tensions finally reach a breaking point. The details differ from source to source, as they often do. Ancient storytellers preserved multiple versions of the event. Some emphasize politics. Others emphasize personal grievances. A few suggest deeper cosmic disagreements. Yet all versions point toward the same conclusion. Poseidon joins a rebellion. The decision remains one of the most surprising moments in his life. After all, this is not a revolt against a tyrant like Cronus. This is not a struggle for survival. This is a challenge against Zeus, his brother, his ally, the leader he once helped place upon the throne. Why would Poseidon risk such a thing? The answer may lie within everything that has come before. The division of the universe, the contest for Athens, the growing awareness that recognition and power are not distributed equally. Each event leaves a mark. Each disappointment adds weight. Eventually, the burden becomes difficult to ignore. According to one famous tradition, Poseidon joins forces with Hera and Athena. Together, they plot against Zeus. The plan is bold, perhaps reckless. They intend to bind the king of the gods, to strip him of authority, to seize control of Olympus itself. You can almost feel the tension, the secrecy, the uncertainty. torchlight flickering across marble walls, whispered conversations carried through quiet corridors, the sense that something dangerous is unfolding. For Poseidon, the choice reveals a side of his character rarely discussed: ambition. Not the ambition of conquest, the ambition of recognition. He does not simply want power. He wants acknowledgement. He wants a world that reflects his own understanding of his worth. Many listeners can understand that feeling. The desire to have sacrifices recognized. The desire to have contributions remembered. The desire to be seen. Poseidon experiences all of these. The rebellion moves forward. For a brief moment, success seems possible. Zeus is caught off guard. The conspirators act. The future hangs in the balance. Then everything changes. An unexpected ally intervenes. Ancient stories identify this figure differently. Most commonly, it is the mighty hundred-handed giant known as Briareus. Loyal to Zeus, he rushes to the king's aid. The rebellion collapses. The conspirators fail. The throne remains secure. Zeus remains king. The consequences are immediate. Imagine the silence after discovery. The realization that the plan has failed. The understanding that there is no way to undo what has happened. Trust once broken rarely returns unchanged. Poseidon learns this firsthand. Ancient traditions differ regarding Zeus's punishment. Some versions suggest Poseidon and Apollo are temporarily forced to serve a mortal king. Others emphasize humiliation rather than severe punishment. Historians continue debating how these traditions relate to one another. Yet the broader meaning remains consistent. The rebellion leaves scars. Not physical scars, relational scars. The bond between brothers changes, perhaps not permanently, but significantly. Zeus never forgets the challenge. Poseidon never forgets the failure. And failure can be a powerful teacher, especially when pride is involved. For years afterward, Poseidon continues ruling the sea. His temples remain active. His worshippers remain devoted. His power remains immense. Outwardly, little seems different. Yet inwardly, something has shifted. The rebellion forces him to confront a difficult truth. He cannot become king through force. The path is closed. The throne is beyond reach, at least for now. One ancient dream tradition survives from a coastal sanctuary. A priest reportedly dreamed of a towering wave rising toward Olympus. Higher, higher, almost touching the mountain's summit. Then the wave collapses, not because it lacks strength, because the mountain remains. The symbolism would have been obvious to ancient listeners. The sea is powerful. The mountain endures. Poseidon can challenge Zeus. But challenging and replacing are not the same thing. As the years pass, a subtle transformation begins. The younger Poseidon might have continued pursuing the throne. The older Poseidon gradually turns elsewhere. Not immediately, not completely, but the shift has begun. His focus returns to the sea, to his kingdom, to the responsibilities that truly belong to him. This change does not eliminate his pride, nor does it eliminate future conflicts. Poseidon will remain passionate, competitive, sometimes stubborn. Those traits never disappear. Yet experience begins teaching him something valuable. Identity cannot depend entirely upon comparison. A life spent measuring itself against another life rarely finds peace. The lesson arrives slowly, like erosion shaping stone, and he has not fully learned it yet. Far from it, because another chapter is beginning. A chapter not centered on rivalry or rebellion. A chapter centered on companionship, love, and the possibility of stability. Deep beneath the waves in a palace of coral and shining stone, someone waits. Someone whose presence will alter the rhythm of Poseidon's life. Not by removing the storm, but by giving the storm a place to rest. The sea remains turbulent above. Lightning flashes across distant waters. Yet somewhere beneath those waves, destiny is preparing a different kind of encounter. One that no trident can force, and no kingdom can guarantee. The storm has passed. Morning sunlight filters through clear water. You descend slowly into the depths of Poseidon's kingdom. Above you, the surface glows like liquid glass. Shafts of golden light reach downward through shifting currents. Fish drift between columns of coral. Seagrass moves gently with the rhythm of the ocean. Far below stands a palace, not a fortress built for war. Not a throne room built for conquest. A home. At least that is what it is meant to become. For all his power, Poseidon has spent much of his life surrounded by movement. Wars, rivalries, storms, competitions, victories, disappointments. The sea reflects his nature perfectly, because neither remains still for long. Yet even gods grow weary of endless turbulence. Even immortals experience loneliness. Ancient myths rarely speak about loneliness directly. The Greeks often preferred stories of action and consequence. But when you follow Poseidon's life closely, the feeling appears again and again. His rivalry with Zeus, his disappointment in Athens, his failed rebellion, all reveal a god searching for something beyond power, perhaps understanding, perhaps belonging, perhaps simply companionship. Whatever the answer, it leads him toward one of the most important relationships of his life, toward Amphitrite. The stories surrounding their meeting vary considerably. Some traditions describe Amphitrite as one of the Nereids, the sea nymph daughters of the ancient sea god Nereus. Others emphasize her beauty, others her wisdom. A few focus on her independence. The differences are revealing. Because unlike many figures in mythology, Amphitrite is remembered less for dramatic adventures than for the qualities she embodies. Grace, balance, stability, qualities Poseidon often lacks. One ancient story tells that Poseidon first sees her dancing among her sisters beneath the waves. The image feels almost dreamlike, sunlight shimmering through water, voices echoing softly through underwater caverns, the scent of salt carried by gentle currents. Amphitrite moving effortlessly through the sea she calls home. Poseidon is captivated. At least that is how later storytellers describe it. But what exactly captivates her? Beauty alone seems insufficient. After all, gods encounter beauty constantly. Perhaps something deeper draws his attention. Amphitrite belongs to the sea naturally, not as its ruler, as part of it. She possesses the calm confidence of someone who does not need recognition. The contrast with Poseidon is striking. He has spent years proving himself. She simply exists, and that difference may fascinate him. According to the most famous version of the myth, Poseidon seeks her hand in marriage. Amphitrite refuses. The rejection surprises him, perhaps even wounds his pride. Many figures in mythology accept divine attention eagerly. Amphitrite does not. Instead, she flees. Some stories say she hides at the far edges of the world. Others place her near the great Oceanus that encircles creation. Whatever the location, the message remains clear. She values independence, and she is not easily persuaded. For Poseidon, this creates a challenge unlike any he has faced before. Strength cannot solve it. Authority cannot solve it. Power cannot solve it. The sea god who commands storms suddenly finds himself confronting something far more complicated. Another person's choice. Ancient myths often reveal character through obstacles. The way a figure responds to resistance matters. It tells us who they are. Poseidon might have reacted with anger. Many gods do. Instead, he chooses patience, or at least a version of patience. The stories describe him sending messengers to locate Amphitrite. Eventually, one succeeds, a dolphin. The creature becomes one of mythology's most charming intermediaries. According to the tale, the dolphin speaks on Poseidon's behalf. Whether through persuasion, kindness, or simple persistence, Amphitrite eventually agrees to return. The marriage follows. In gratitude, Poseidon places the dolphin among the stars as a constellation. Historians cannot know whether this story emerged to explain the constellation or whether the constellation inspired the story. Ancient traditions often work both ways, yet the symbolism remains beautiful. Even a mighty sea god depends upon help. Even immortals cannot achieve everything alone. The wedding itself becomes one of the great celebrations of the sea. Imagine the scene. Coral halls illuminated by shimmering light. Sea creatures gathering from distant waters. Music echoing through underwater chambers. Pearls reflecting soft colors across polished stone. The ocean itself seems alive with joy. For a time, Poseidon appears genuinely content. The marriage offers something rare. Stability. Not complete stability. Nothing in Poseidon's life is ever completely stable. But enough. Enough to change him. Enough to soften certain edges. Enough to remind him that identity can be built through connection rather than competition. You begin to see a different side of the sea god. Not merely the ruler. The partner. Not merely the earthshaker. The husband. These quieter roles rarely attract as much attention as battles and storms. Yet they often reveal more about a character. The ancient Greeks seem to have recognized this. Amphitrite gradually becomes queen of the sea. Her presence transforms Poseidon's court. The palace beneath the waves becomes more than a symbol of authority. It becomes a household, a community, a place where relationships matter. And yet mythology rarely allows happiness to remain uncomplicated. The sea itself teaches this lesson. Calm waters can change unexpectedly. Poseidon's nature remains restless. Marriage does not erase ambition. It does not erase pride. It does not erase every flaw. Ancient stories preserve numerous accounts of his relationships beyond Amphitrite. Some are romantic, some tragic, some deeply troubling by modern standards. The myths reveal a god who continues struggling with desire and self-control, a god whose immense power does not guarantee wisdom. This contradiction becomes part of his identity, the ruler capable of devotion, the ruler also capable of causing pain. Like the sea, he remains complex, impossible to reduce to a single trait. One tradition tells of a dream seen by a priestess serving at a coastal shrine. In the dream, two currents flow together beneath the ocean. For a time they move as one, then they separate, then meet again farther away. Ancient interpreters viewed the vision as a symbol of relationships, not permanent stillness, shared movement through change. Perhaps that image suits Poseidon and Amphitrite. Their story is not perfect harmony. It is coexistence, balance achieved despite differences. As the years pass, another transformation begins. Poseidon becomes a father, then a father again, and again. Some of his children will become heroes, others will become monsters. Some will bring honor, others sorrow. Through them, the complexity already present within Poseidon will multiply. Because children often reveal aspects of ourselves we never expected to see. The sea remains calm above the palace. Sunlight dances across the water. And deep beneath those gentle waves, the Lord of the Oceans experiences something rarer than victory. A sense of belonging, yet destiny is already preparing new challenges. For soon Poseidon will discover that legacy cannot be controlled, not even by a god. And the children who carry his blood will shape his story in ways he never imagined. The sea is quiet tonight. Moonlight filters through the water above, turning the depths into a world of silver shadows. Gentle currents move through forests of seagrass. Far away, whales sing in the darkness, their voices carrying across enormous distances. You stand within Poseidon's underwater kingdom as another chapter of his life begins. Not the chapter of a warrior, not the chapter of a rival, not even the chapter of a husband, the chapter of a father. For many mortals, parenthood becomes one of life's most profound transformations. Ancient mythology often suggests the same is true for gods, because children create something neither power nor wealth can provide, a future that exists beyond yourself. And for Poseidon, that future becomes remarkably complicated. Few figures in Greek mythology leave behind a family as vast, varied, and surprising. His descendants include noble heroes and terrifying monsters, wise rulers and dangerous giants, creatures of beauty and creatures of nightmare. Through them, the contradictions already present within Poseidon become impossible to ignore. The sea itself offers a fitting comparison. Its surface may appear calm, its depths may conceal wonders. Yet those same depths may also hide dangers beyond imagination. Poseidon's family reflects that duality perfectly. Ancient Greeks often viewed divine children as extensions of their divine parent, not identical reflections, expressions of different aspects of their nature. If that interpretation is correct, then Poseidon's descendants reveal more about him than almost any other myths. Some of his children become admired throughout Greece. One of the most famous is Theseus. The traditions surrounding Theseus are complex. In some versions, he is the son of a mortal king. In others, Poseidon shares responsibility for his birth. The ambiguity itself is fascinating. Ancient traditions often preserved multiple possibilities rather than choosing a single answer. Yet regardless of the details, many Greeks believed Poseidon's influence flowed through the hero. Theseus embodies courage, determination, leadership, qualities Poseidon values deeply. You can imagine the sea god watching from afar as the young hero grows, observing his victories, observing his mistakes, observing the difficult choices that shape his destiny, perhaps with pride, perhaps with concern, perhaps with both. Because parenthood rarely involves simple emotions. The same stories that bring joy can also bring worry. And mythology understands this surprisingly well. Yet not all of Poseidon's children inspire admiration. Far from it. One of the most famous is the Cyclops known as Polyphemus. Unlike Theseus, Polyphemus becomes a figure associated with fear, isolation, violence. His immense size and frightening appearance ensure he remains unforgettable. The contrast is striking. How can one father produce both hero and monster? Ancient listeners undoubtedly notice the contradiction. Perhaps that is precisely the point. Poseidon himself contains contradictions. His children simply make them visible. The Greeks understood nature in similar terms. The sea provides food. The sea causes shipwrecks. The sea creates opportunity. The sea destroys dreams. Both realities coexist. Neither cancels the other. And so it is with Poseidon. His legacy refuses simplicity. Another child emerges from the myths. Triton, half-human in appearance above the waist, fish-like below Triton, becomes one of the most recognizable figures associated with the ocean. Unlike many of Poseidon's descendants, Triton often serves as a loyal companion, a herald, a messenger, an extension of the Sea King's authority. Ancient artists frequently depicted him carrying a conch shell whose sound could calm or stir the waters. The symbolism is elegant. Where Poseidon commands, Triton communicates. Where Poseidon embodies power, Triton represents connection. The family grows larger still. Ancient mythology attributes countless descendants to Poseidon. Some become rulers, some become warriors, some become creatures remembered only in fragments of surviving stories. Each adds another thread to the tapestry of his legacy, yet a pattern gradually emerges. The most memorable descendants often inherit extremes: great strength, great courage, great danger, great passion. Moderation rarely appears among them, and perhaps that reflects their father. Poseidon is not a god of moderation. He is a god of immense forces. The children mirror the source. One evening, according to a coastal tradition recorded centuries later, a priest dreams of a vast underwater tree. Its roots stretch through the ocean floor. Its branches reach toward distant islands. Some branches produce golden fruit. Others bear strange twisted shapes, yet all belong to the same tree. Ancient interpreters viewed the dream as a symbol of lineage. The image feels particularly appropriate for Poseidon. His descendants vary enormously, yet they remain connected by blood, by fate, by the influence of a father whose nature is anything but simple. As the years pass, Poseidon experiences both pride and disappointment through his children. The stories rarely describe these emotions directly, but the consequences reveal them. He protects some descendants fiercely. He intervenes on behalf of others. When harm comes to them, his reactions can be intense, sometimes dangerously intense. The pattern becomes increasingly clear. For all his flaws, Poseidon cares deeply about family. This devotion will eventually lead to one of the defining conflicts of his life, a conflict involving a clever mortal named Odysseus. But that story remains in the future. For now, another lesson is unfolding, the lesson of responsibility. Children inherit more than gifts. They inherit consequences. A hero's success reflects upon the parent. A monster's actions do as well. Poseidon cannot claim credit only for the admirable descendants. He must also confront the troubling ones. The realization is uncomfortable, yet maturity often involves accepting uncomfortable truths. And despite his immortality, Poseidon continues evolving. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. Ancient Greek religion often emphasized this complexity. The gods were not flawless ideals. They were powerful beings whose stories reflected real emotional struggles: jealousy, love, pride, grief, responsibility. Poseidon experiences all of them. That is one reason his myths endure. They feel larger than life, yet strangely recognizable. Even today, far above the palace, waves roll across the moonlit sea. The water seems peaceful. But peace can be deceptive, because among Poseidon's many children stands one figure whose fate will soon alter everything. A son living upon a distant island. A son whose suffering will awaken a father's wrath. And when that moment arrives, the sea itself will become an instrument of vengeance. For love can inspire kindness. Love can inspire sacrifice. And sometimes, love can inspire storms. The ocean continues its slow breathing beneath the stars. The Lord of the Sea watches over his vast family, unaware that one act of violence against a single child will soon ignite a feud remembered for thousands of years. A feud that will reveal both the depth of his devotion and the danger of his pride. The sea is changing. What was calm only moments ago now darkens beneath gathering clouds. Wind sweeps across the water. The scent of rain drifts through the air. Waves rise higher with each passing moment, rolling toward the shore like advancing armies. You stand beside the ocean and feel something ancient awakening. Fear. For countless generations, sailors have understood a simple truth. No one truly conquers the sea. Ships may cross it. Kings may profit from it. Empires may depend upon it. Yet ultimately, the ocean remains beyond human control. The ancient Greeks saw that reality reflected in Poseidon, not merely the ruler of the sea, the embodiment of its unpredictability, its generosity, its danger, its anger. As the years pass, stories about Poseidon's temper spread throughout the Greek world. Some describe storms appearing without warning. Others tell of earthquakes shaking entire cities. Still others speak of floods swallowing fertile lands. Modern listeners sometimes interpret these tales as examples of divine cruelty. Ancient audiences often saw something more complicated, a reminder that power carries consequences, a reminder that respect matters, a reminder that nature itself does not bend easily to human desires. You can imagine a merchant vessel preparing to leave harbor, the smell of tar and wet rope, the creaking of wooden planks, families gathered on the docks, sailors making final offerings at a shrine, a small cup of wine poured into the sea, a whispered prayer, not because they know Poseidon will help them, because they hope he will. Hope becomes especially important when certainty is impossible, and certainty is rarely available upon the sea. Ancient religious practices often reflected this understanding. Offerings were not transactions. They were acknowledgements, recognitions of forces larger than oneself. Poseidon stood among the greatest of those forces. The relationship between mortals and the sea god therefore remains delicate. Devotion earns favor. Disrespect risks disaster, at least according to the myths. One story tells of sailors who neglect their rituals. Another describes rulers who boast excessively. A third speaks of communities that forget old traditions. The details vary. The outcome rarely does. Poseidon responds. Storms arrive. Ships disappear. Earthquakes follow. The message becomes unmistakable. The sea remembers. Yet these stories raise an important question. Does Poseidon punish because he seeks justice, or because he feels insulted? The answer remains surprisingly difficult to determine, and that uncertainty lies at the heart of his character. Ancient traditions offer conflicting interpretations. Some portray him as a guardian of sacred order. Others emphasize wounded pride. Historians continue debating which perspective dominated different regions of the Greek world. Perhaps both existed simultaneously. Human beings often interpret power according to their own experiences. A fisherman and a king may view the same storm very differently. One evening, according to a tradition preserved near the Isthmus of Corinth, a priest receives a troubling dream. In the dream, the sea appears perfectly calm. Not a single wave disturbs its surface. The stillness feels unnatural. Then, without warning, the water rises into a towering wall, stretching toward the stars. The dream ends before the wave falls. Ancient interpreters considered the vision significant. The danger was not merely destruction. The danger was unpredictability. No one knew exactly when calm would become chaos. The symbolism fits Poseidon perfectly. His anger rarely arrives gradually. It erupts like an earthquake, like a storm, like a wave striking stone. This aspect of his personality creates a paradox. The same god who helps cities flourish can threaten those cities. The same god who protects sailors can destroy fleets. The same god who inspires devotion can inspire terror. Ancient Greeks did not view this contradiction as a flaw in the mythology. They viewed it as realism. Nature behaves similarly. A river that nourishes crops may later flood. A mountain that provides shelter may later erupt. Powerful forces rarely remain entirely benevolent or entirely hostile. Poseidon reflects that reality. His myths teach respect rather than comfort. Yet despite his fearsome reputation, moments of restraint appear throughout the traditions. Not every offense receives punishment. Not every mistake provokes wrath. Many sailors complete their journeys safely. Many cities prosper beneath his protection. Many worshippers experience his favor. The sea god is not a creature of constant anger. He is capable of generosity. The problem lies elsewhere. When his anger does emerge, it is immense, perhaps because emotions themselves seem amplified within him. His love is intense. His pride is intense. His disappointment is intense. Therefore, his rage becomes intense as well. The pattern appears repeatedly, and it will soon shape one of the most famous episodes in all Greek mythology. Because among Poseidon's many descendants stands a son living far from Olympus. A son unlike heroes such as Theseus. A son unlike Triton. A son who lives in isolation, upon a lonely island. Far from cities, far from civilization, far from sympathy. His name is Polyphemus, and destiny is already moving toward him. Far away, another figure is traveling across the sea. A mortal, a survivor of war, a man renowned for intelligence rather than strength. Odysseus. At this moment, neither understands the role the other will play. Neither realizes they are moving toward a collision that will echo through generations. Poseidon certainly does not know. He continues ruling his kingdom, guiding tides, watching over shrines, listening to prayers carried across the waves. Yet fate has already begun weaving the threads together. The Greeks often imagined destiny in this way. Quiet, patient, invisible, Events that appear unrelated gradually converge. Choices made years apart suddenly collide. Consequences emerge from unexpected places. The process has already begun. And at its center stands a father. Because the coming conflict will not begin with an insult against Poseidon himself. It will begin with harm done to one of his children. That distinction matters. Very much. For while Poseidon can sometimes ignore offenses directed toward himself, injuries inflicted upon family touch something deeper, something older, something harder to forgive. The clouds overhead continue gathering. Lightning flickers far beyond the horizon. The sea grows darker with every passing moment. And somewhere across those waters, a clever hero approaches an island where a Cyclops waits. Neither can see the storm that follows, yet the storm is coming. Not a storm of wind alone, a storm of grief, a storm of vengeance, a storm that will reveal how far the Lord of the Sea is willing to go for those he loves. And once it begins, it will last for years. Night settles over the sea. The horizon disappears into darkness. Only the moon remains casting a silver path across the water. Gentle waves rise and fall beneath distant stars. Somewhere far away, unseen islands drift like shadows between sea and sky. You stand at the beginning of one of mythology's most famous journeys. But tonight you are not following the traveler. You are following the god waiting at the journey's end. For years, Poseidon has ruled the oceans. He has seen kingdoms rise and fall. He has watched countless ships cross his waters. Most voyages are forgotten. One voyage will not be, because one man is about to wound something deeper than the sea god's pride. He is about to wound his heart. The story begins after the fall of Troy. The long war has ended. The fires have cooled. The armies have departed. Among the returning heroes is Odysseus, king of Ithaca, master strategist, survivor. The Greeks admired him greatly, not because he was the strongest warrior, because he was clever, resourceful, patient, capable of finding solutions where others saw only obstacles. These qualities will carry him through many dangers. They will also create new dangers, for intelligence like strength can become arrogance when left unchecked. As Odysseus sails homeward, his fleet reaches a remote island. The island appears empty. The caves seem abandoned. The shore appears peaceful. Appearances, however, often deceive. Inside one enormous cave lives Polyphemus, the Cyclops, the son of Poseidon. Ancient storytellers describe him as gigantic, powerful, fearsome, a creature who exists far from ordinary human society. He tends flocks, lives alone, and follows customs very different from those of Greek civilization. Modern interpretations often emphasize his brutality. Ancient listeners may have noticed something else as well: his isolation. Polyphemus belongs neither fully to the world of monsters, nor fully to the world of men. In that sense, he resembles his father more than many realize. Both stand apart from others. Both command tremendous power. Both struggle with relationships. The similarities are easy to overlook, yet they matter. When Odysseus and his companions enter the cave, events quickly turn tragic. The Cyclops returns. The visitors become prisoners. Fear fills the darkness. The smell of sheep and smoke hangs in the air. The cave feels enormous, oppressive, inescapable. Then violence begins. Polyphemus kills several of the trapped men. The details remain disturbing even after thousands of years. Ancient mythology rarely hides the harshness of survival. Odysseus understands the danger immediately. Strength will not save him. Only intelligence offers hope. And so he devises a plan that eventually succeeds. The hero blinds the Cyclops with a sharpened stake. Pain erupts through the cave. The giant screams. His world collapses into darkness. And Odysseus escapes. Many listeners instinctively celebrate this moment. After all, the hero survives. The monster is defeated. The story appears straightforward. Yet mythology rarely remains straightforward for long, because everything depends on perspective. From Odysseus's perspective, the blinding is necessary. From Polyphemus's perspective, it is catastrophic. From Poseidon's perspective, it is something else entirely. Imagine the moment when news reaches the sea god. Ancient myths do not describe it directly, yet you can picture it. The underwater palace glowing softly beneath the ocean, currents moving through coral halls, messengers arriving with terrible information. A son injured, a son humiliated, a son crying out for justice. The reaction is immediate. Polyphemus raises his voice toward the heavens and prays to his father. The prayer survives as one of the most important moments in the story. He does not ask for wealth. He does not ask for revenge through death. He asks that Odysseus suffer. that his journey home become difficult, that he learn the cost of his actions, and Poseidon listens. The request touches something deep within him, not merely because he loves his son, because the injury feels personal. Family has always mattered to Poseidon. Again and again throughout his life, relationships shape his choices. His loyalty to siblings during the Titan War, his marriage to Amphitrite, his devotion to many descendants. Now that loyalty transforms into anger, the sea god decides to act. What follows is extraordinary. Not because Poseidon destroys Odysseus immediately, because he does not. He chooses something slower. Years of obstacles, years of storms, years of setbacks. The punishment becomes a journey. Ancient audiences would have recognized the symbolism. The sea itself becomes the instrument of consequence. Every wave carries Poseidon's displeasure. Every storm reflects his determination. Every delay serves as a reminder. The conflict reveals much about both characters. Odysseus refuses to surrender. Poseidon refuses to forgive. Neither yields, neither changes course. The result is a struggle lasting far longer than either expects. One tradition describes sailors witnessing strange omens during this period. Dolphins abandoning familiar waters, unexpected storms appearing beneath clear skies, lightning striking distant seas without warning. Whether such stories originated from actual observations or later imagination remains uncertain. Yet they reveal how ancient people understood Poseidon's involvement. The natural world itself seemed to participate. As the years pass, something fascinating happens. The revenge begins transforming the avenger. Poseidon remains powerful. He remains justified in many listeners' eyes. After all, genuine harm was done to his child. Yet the longer the pursuit continues, the more complicated it becomes. At what point does justice become obsession? At what point does punishment exceed necessity? Ancient myths rarely provide simple answers. Instead, they invite reflection. The question lingers beneath the story. And perhaps that uncertainty explains why the tale endures. Because most people understand anger. Most people understand loyalty. Most people understand the desire to defend family. The difficulty lies in knowing when to stop. Poseidon struggles with that difficulty. Years pass. Odysseus suffers. The sea god continues his efforts. Yet destiny moves in directions even gods cannot fully control. Other divine powers intervene. Other forces influence events. The world remains larger than any single will. Eventually, despite every obstacle, Odysseus reaches home. The journey ends. The hero survives. The revenge fails to achieve total victory. And therein lies another lesson. Even gods possess limits. Poseidon can delay fate. He cannot completely rewrite it. The realization does not erase his anger, but it introduces something new. Perspective. Slowly, painfully, imperfectly, as all genuine lessons do. Far above the waves, stars continue their silent movement across the heavens. The storms eventually pass. The years continue unfolding, and the sea god remains where he has always been. Powerful, proud, complex, yet changed by the very conflict he created. For vengeance has a curious nature. It always reaches its target, but it rarely leaves the one pursuing it unchanged. The moonlight dances upon the water. The long feud begins fading into memory. And beyond the shores of countless kingdoms, another chapter of Poseidon's life is already taking shape. A chapter not centered on a single hero, but on entire cities, entire civilizations, and the millions of mortals who will spend centuries loving him, fearing him, and wondering which face of the sea god they might encounter. The storm has faded into memory. Tonight, the sea breathes gently beneath a sky filled with stars. Harbor lights flicker along distant shores. Fishing boats rest quietly upon dark water. Somewhere beyond the horizon, sailors follow familiar constellations home. You stand not beside a single city, but beside an entire civilization. Because to understand Poseidon fully, you must leave behind individual adventures for a while. You must step into the lives of ordinary people, the fishermen, the merchants, the shipbuilders, the travelers, the families waiting on distant shores. For these people, Poseidon is not merely a character in a story. He is part of daily life. Every voyage begins with him. Every storm reminds them of him. Every safe return inspires gratitude toward him. Few Olympian gods become woven so deeply into ordinary existence. Zeus rules the heavens. Athena inspires wisdom. Apollo governs prophecy and music, yet Poseidon touches something immediate, the sea. And for the ancient Greeks, the sea is everywhere. The Greek world is a landscape of islands, peninsulas, rocky coastlines, and sheltered harbors. Travel by water is often easier than travel by land. Trade depends upon ships. Communication depends upon ships. Prosperity depends upon ships. The ocean connects everything. And therefore Poseidon connects everything. You can imagine standing at dawn in a bustling harbour. The smell of salt mixes with fresh fish and olive oil. Merchants prepare cargo. Sailors tighten ropes. Seabirds cry overhead. Wooden vessels rock gently against stone docks. Before departure, many captains pause. A prayer, a small offering, a moment of respect. Not because they are certain it will help, because uncertainty itself demands humility. The sea has taught them that lesson, again and again. Ancient temples dedicated to Poseidon begin appearing throughout the Greek world. Some stand beside dramatic cliffs overlooking crashing waves. Others rise near busy ports. Others occupy sacred promontories where sea and sky seem to meet. Among the most famous is the sanctuary at Cape Sunion. Imagine approaching it by ship. White marble gleaming beneath sunlight, columns rising above rugged cliffs, the endless sea stretching beyond. For ancient sailors, the sight must have felt reassuring, a reminder that they remained within the god's gaze. Even today, surviving ruins preserve some of that feeling. Historians continue studying these sanctuaries. Surviving evidence suggests they served not only religious functions but social ones as well. People gathered there, shared news, made offerings, marked important transitions. The temples became bridges between human communities and divine power. And at the center of those relationships stood Poseidon. Yet devotion does not eliminate fear. In fact, the two often grow together. The more important a force becomes, the more seriously people take its dangers. Ancient worshippers rarely imagined Poseidon as gentle. They respected him precisely because he could be terrifying. The sea offered constant reminders. A calm voyage could become a disaster within hours. Unexpected winds, hidden reefs, sudden storms. Entire crews might vanish. Families might never learn what happened. The ocean rarely explained itself, neither did Poseidon. This uncertainty shaped his image. Unlike Athena, whose wisdom appears orderly, or Demeter, whose gifts follow predictable seasons, Poseidon remains unpredictable. One day he protects, the next he punishes. One day he grants safe passage, the next he sends destruction. Ancient listeners understood this contradiction, because nature itself behaves similarly. The Greeks did not necessarily seek perfect consistency from their gods. They sought understanding, balance, respect. One old story tells of a sailor who survives a violent storm after promising an offering to Poseidon. Another tells of a wealthy merchant who neglects his vows and later loses his fleet. Whether such events truly occurred mattered less than what the stories taught. The sea rewards humility. The sea punishes arrogance. The lesson appears repeatedly, and nowhere does it appear more clearly than in Poseidon's relationship with cities. Some communities embrace him wholeheartedly. Others approach him cautiously. Many do both. The city of Corinth, for example, develops particularly strong connections to Poseidon. Located near important maritime routes, it depends heavily upon trade. The sea is its lifeblood. The god becomes part of its identity. Festivals celebrate him. Athletic competitions honor him. Priests maintain sacred traditions linked to his worship. You can almost hear the sounds of such celebrations. Crowds gathering beneath bright skies, musicians performing, athletes competing, incense drifting upward from altars, children watching processions move through city streets. For a moment, Poseidon appears not as a distant force of nature, but as a member of the community itself, a protector, a patron, a source of shared identity. Yet even among devoted cities, caution remains. No one forgets his temper. No one forgets the stories. One earthquake, one storm, one failed harvest linked to changing weather. Any of these events might suddenly alter public feeling. The relationship remains dynamic, alive, changing, much like the sea. One night, according to a temple tradition preserved near the coast, a priest dreams of a harbor filled with ships. Each vessel carries a different flag, different goods, different crews, yet all float upon the same water. When the priest asks who rules the harbor, a voice replies, "The one beneath every keel." The dream spreads among worshippers. Its meaning feels obvious. Kings govern cities, generals command armies, merchants control trade, yet beneath all of them lies the sea. And beneath the sea lies Poseidon. The image captures something essential about his influence. He is rarely the most visible power, yet often the most fundamental. This truth helps explain why his worship endures for centuries. Not because he is perfect, because he feels necessary. The sea cannot be ignored. Neither can the god associated with it. As the generations pass, countless mortals encounter Poseidon in different ways. Some know him through prosperity, some through disaster, some through rituals performed at coastal shrines, others through stories told beside evening fires. Together, these experiences create a complex reputation: loved, feared, respected, questioned. No single description captures him completely, and perhaps that is fitting. The ocean itself defies simple description. The sea can never be reduced to one mood, neither can Poseidon. Far beyond the temples and harbors, however, another aspect of his nature continues growing. An aspect even more ancient than his connection to sailors. An aspect hidden beneath mountains and valleys, deep beneath the earth itself. For while mortals look toward the sea when they think of Poseidon, the ground beneath their feet is also listening. And soon, the Earthshaker will remind the world that his kingdom extends far beyond the waves. The night is still, too still. The sea lies calm beneath the moon. Not a single wave disturbs the shoreline. Fishing boats rest quietly in sheltered coves. The stars shine brightly above the world. Everything appears peaceful, and yet something feels wrong. The air carries a strange tension, a silence that seems to be waiting. Ancient Greeks knew this feeling well. Sometimes the most frightening moments arrive before disaster, not during the storm, before it. Not during the earthquake, before it. A subtle unease, a whisper hidden beneath ordinary life. You stand in such a moment now, because tonight you move beyond the sea, beyond harbors and coastlines, beyond ships and sailors. Tonight, you descend into one of the oldest aspects of Poseidon's identity, the Earthshaker. For modern audiences, Poseidon is primarily remembered as the god of the ocean. Ancient worshippers often saw something much larger. Many historians continue to debate which aspect of Poseidon came first. Some surviving evidence suggests his connection to earthquakes may be extraordinarily ancient, possibly older than some of the traditions linking him to the sea. The question remains unresolved. Archaeological discoveries provide clues but not certainty. As with so much mythology, mystery remains. Yet the uncertainty itself is fascinating, because it suggests Poseidon may have carried layers of meaning accumulated across centuries. Different regions, different cultures, different fears, all flowing together into one divine figure. The Greeks lived in a landscape shaped by seismic activity. Mountains rose from restless geological forces. Earthquakes occurred without warning. Entire communities could be transformed overnight. No scientific explanation existed, only experience. And experience taught one terrifying lesson. The ground itself could not always be trusted. Imagine living in a stone house beside a mountain. The evening is peaceful. A fire burns quietly. The smell of olive oil fills the room. Family members speak softly before sleep. Then the earth moves. Not gradually. Suddenly, walls shake. Objects fall. Fear erupts. No enemy appears. No warning arrives. The danger comes from beneath. Ancient people naturally searched for meaning in such events, and they found it in Poseidon, the Earthshaker, the one whose trident could split stone, the one whose power extended beneath mountains and valleys, the one capable of reshaping landscapes. The symbolism fits him perfectly. Throughout his life, Poseidon has embodied forces that resist control. The sea, storms, powerful emotions, earthquakes belong naturally beside them. All emerge unexpectedly. All demand respect. All remind humanity of its limitations. Ancient myths often describe Poseidon striking the earth with his trident. One blow, mountains tremble. Another blow, springs emerge from dry ground. Another blow, cities shake. These stories are dramatic, yet beneath the drama lies a deeper idea. The god's influence reaches into hidden places, places invisible to ordinary eyes. The sea hides its depths beneath the surface. The earth hides its forces beneath the soil. Poseidon governs both. Perhaps that connection explains why he remains so difficult to understand. Much of his power operates unseen. One tradition tells of a shepherd who notices unusual behavior among animals before an earthquake. Dogs bark without reason. Birds abandon their nests. Horses become restless. The shepherd dreams of a giant trident emerging from beneath a mountain. When the earthquake arrives days later, the dream spreads through nearby villages. Whether the story reflects genuine observations or later imagination remains uncertain. Historians continue debating how ancient communities interpreted natural warnings. Yet the symbolism is unmistakable. Nature itself seems to sense Poseidon's approach. The image would have resonated deeply with ancient listeners. For many Greeks, earthquakes felt alive, intentional, personal. not random events, messages, warnings, expressions of divine will. Modern understanding has changed. The emotional experience has not. Even today, earthquakes inspire awe. The sensation remains difficult to describe. The realization that something vast and powerful exists beneath familiar ground. The realization that stability may be temporary. Ancient myths captured that feeling through Poseidon. They transformed geology into story, fear into meaning, uncertainty into narrative. And in doing so, they created one of mythology's most enduring symbols. The Earthshaker becomes more than a title. It becomes a reflection of his character. Because Poseidon often affects people the way earthquakes affect landscapes. Suddenly, powerfully, permanently, his presence changes things. Relationships, cities, journeys, lives. Sometimes for the better, sometimes not, but rarely without consequence. One evening, according to a sanctuary tradition preserved in fragments, priests observe an unusual omen. The sea remains calm, the sky remains clear, yet a spring near the temple begins rippling violently. No wind touches the water. No visible cause appears. The next morning, an earthquake strikes the region. The story spreads quickly. Soon, worshippers interpret the spring as a warning from Poseidon himself, a reminder that his power extends beyond what the eye can see. Whether the event occurred exactly as described matters less than what it reveals. The Greeks understood Poseidon as a god of hidden forces, not merely visible ones. And perhaps that understanding applies to his life as well. Many of the most important moments in his story begin beneath the surface. The resentment towards Zeus, the disappointment of Athens, the devotion to his children, the longing for recognition. These emotions remain hidden for years before revealing themselves. Like tectonic pressure building beneath the earth, the comparison feels appropriate. Both emotional and geological forces accumulate quietly. Both eventually seek release. As the years pass, worshippers continue honoring Poseidon in both roles: sea god, earthshaker, protector, destroyer. The titles seem contradictory, yet ancient religion rarely demanded simplicity. Reality itself is not simple. The ocean can sustain life and take it away. The earth can nurture crops and unleash disaster. The same force can create and destroy. Poseidon embodies that truth more completely than almost any other Olympian. Perhaps that explains why he remains so memorable. Not because he represents one aspect of existence, because he represents many. And those aspects rarely exist in perfect harmony. Far above the sleeping world, clouds drift across the moon. Mountains stand silent against the night sky. Beneath them, unseen forces continue their slow movement. The Earthshaker watches, patient, powerful, ancient. Yet even now, as his influence reaches across sea and land alike, another question waits. A question that has followed him since the earliest days after the Titan War. If Poseidon commands storms, earthquakes, oceans, and kings, why was he never king himself? The answer lies ahead. And for the first time, Poseidon is finally ready to confront it. The sea is calm again. A full moon hangs above the horizon. Silver light stretches across the water in a path that seems to lead nowhere and everywhere at once. The air is cool. The waves move gently against the shore. You stand beside Poseidon at the height of his power. The long struggles of his youth are behind him. The Titan War is a distant memory. His kingdom spans every ocean. His temples stand throughout the Greek world. Sailors fear him. Cities honor him. Earthquakes bear his name. Storms obey his will. Few beings in all creation possess greater authority. And yet tonight a single question remains. Why was Poseidon never king of Olympus? The question has followed him like a shadow. Sometimes obvious, sometimes hidden, but always present. From the moment the lots were cast, from the moment Zeus claimed the heavens, from the moment Olympus gained a ruler. The possibility of another outcome has lingered in the background of Poseidon's life. Ancient Greeks must have wondered about it as well. After all, Poseidon was not weak. He was not foolish. He was not insignificant. He stood beside Zeus during the Titan War. He commanded 1/3 of the universe. He possessed power rivaling almost any Olympian. Why then did destiny choose another? The myths never offer a simple answer. Instead, they offer clues. And tonight you follow those clues. The first clue lies in leadership. Poseidon inspires awe. Zeus inspires allegiance. The difference seems subtle. It is not. Throughout mythology, Poseidon often commands respect through strength. People honor him because they understand his power. They recognize what he can do. They fear the consequences of provoking him. Zeus, by contrast, gradually becomes a figure who unites, not perfectly, not always successfully, but consistently. When disputes arise among the gods, they turn towards Zeus. When order must be maintained, they look towards Zeus. When cosmic balance requires a decision, Zeus makes it. Leadership and power are related. They are not identical. Ancient storytellers appear deeply interested in this distinction. Again and again, Zeus occupies the role of judge. Poseidon occupies the role of force. Both are necessary, yet only one naturally fits the throne. A second clue appears in the contest for Athens. You remember that moment? The rocky hill, the gathered citizens, the gifts offered by two gods. Poseidon presents strength. Athena presents wisdom. The city chooses wisdom. The decision reveals something important. Human communities often value stability more than spectacle, long-term prosperity more than short-term power. The lesson is painful for Poseidon, yet it echoes throughout his life. Many of his greatest disappointments emerge from the same pattern. He offers power. Others seek something different. Perhaps that difference explains why Olympus never becomes his. A king must do more than command. A king must persuade. The sea god struggles with persuasion, not because he lacks intelligence, because he often trusts strength first. The habit follows him everywhere, even into rebellion. The failed challenge against Zeus provides another clue. For a brief moment, Poseidon attempts to alter the balance of power. He joins a conspiracy. He seeks change through force. The effort collapses, and the collapse reveals something fascinating. Even when Poseidon pursues kingship, he does so in a manner that confirms why kingship eludes him. He tries to seize authority rather than cultivate it. The irony would not have been lost on ancient audiences. One tradition tells of an elderly priest standing beside the sea at sunset. The priest dreams of 3 crowns floating upon the water. One shines with lightning, one glows with darkness, one gleams with sea foam. When he reaches for the sea foam crown, it drifts away. Not because it is denied, because it belongs elsewhere. The dream survives only in fragments. Its meaning remains uncertain. Yet many later storytellers interpreted it symbolically. The sea crown is not lesser, it is simply different. And perhaps that idea moves closer to the truth than any argument about power. Because Poseidon does not fail to become king. He succeeds at becoming himself. The distinction matters. For much of his life, he measures his accomplishments against Zeus. This is understandable. The comparison seems unavoidable. One brother rules Olympus, the other does not. Yet comparison often distorts reality. Imagine judging the ocean because it is not the sky. Imagine judging a mountain because it is not the sea. Each possesses its own nature, its own purpose, its own greatness. Ancient mythology repeatedly returns to this idea. The cosmos functions because different powers fulfill different roles. Zeus governs the heavens. Hades oversees the dead. Poseidon rules the waters. The arrangement creates balance. Remove any one element and the whole system suffers. In that sense, Poseidon becomes indispensable, not despite lacking the throne, because of what he contributes beyond it. Historians who study Greek religion often notice something interesting. Poseidon's worship remains remarkably widespread, even in regions where Zeus receives greater formal authority. Why? Because ordinary people interact with Poseidon's domain constantly. They sail, fish, trade, travel, encounter storms, experience earthquakes. The sea god feels immediate, present, personal. His influence touches daily life in ways few other gods can match. The realization gradually changes how you view his story. Perhaps the central tragedy is not that Poseidon never becomes king. Perhaps the tragedy lies in how long he spends measuring himself against kingship. And perhaps the wisdom arrives when he finally stops. Ancient myths never describe a single moment of revelation. No dramatic speech, no sudden transformation. The change appears gradually. After the rebellion, after Athens, after years of rivalry, Poseidon increasingly focuses upon his own kingdom, his own responsibilities, his own legacy. The shift does not erase pride. It does not erase occasional jealousy. Those emotions remain part of him, but they no longer define him completely. Age brings perspective, even to gods. One evening, according to a temple tradition from a coastal sanctuary, worshippers witness an unusual sight. A storm approaches from the horizon. Dark clouds gather. Lightning flashes. Then just before reaching shore, the storm turns away. The sea remains calm. The priests interpret the event as a sign. Power does not always reveal itself through action. Sometimes power reveals itself through restraint. The lesson feels especially appropriate for Poseidon. His younger self might have admired the storm. His older self understands the value of calm waters. As the years continue unfolding, his story enters a new phase. The phase of legacy. Heroes will seek his aid. Cities will remember his name. Entire cultures will define themselves partly through their relationship with the sea. The question of kingship slowly loses importance, because another question becomes more interesting. Not whether Poseidon ruled Olympus, but how he shaped the world beyond Olympus. The moonlight continues dancing across the waves. The ocean stretches endlessly toward distant horizons. And for the first time in many years, the sea god seems less concerned with the throne he never possessed, and more aware of the kingdom that was always his. Yet destiny is not finished with him, for his influence is about to extend far beyond his own lifetime, into the lives of heroes, into the memory of civilizations, into the imagination of generations yet unborn. The moon hangs low above the sea. Its pale light turns the water into silver glass. Gentle waves roll toward distant shores. Somewhere beyond the horizon, ships move through darkness, guided by stars older than memory. You stand at the edge of a new chapter. Not the chapter of Poseidon's rise, not the chapter of his rivalries, not even the chapter of his reign, the chapter of his influence. Because long after a ruler secures a kingdom, another question emerges. What remains? What echoes outward? What lives beyond the ruler's own story? For Poseidon, the answer arrives through heroes. Again and again throughout Greek mythology, remarkable individuals find themselves drawn into his orbit. Sometimes he helps them. Sometimes he opposes them. Sometimes he does both. The relationships are rarely simple, yet each reveals something important about the sea god himself. Ancient listeners understood that heroes functioned as bridges between mortals and gods. Heroes traveled where ordinary people could not, faced challenges beyond normal experience, encountered divine powers directly. Through them, audiences explored larger truths about courage, destiny, and human limitation. And Poseidon appears frequently within those explorations, perhaps because the sea itself represents uncertainty. Every voyage becomes a test. Every horizon conceals possibilities. Every journey carries risk. The symbolism fits the hero's path perfectly. One of the clearest examples remains Theseus, the hero many Greeks associated with Poseidon's lineage. As you remember, traditions differ regarding his parentage. Some emphasize mortal ancestry. Others highlight divine connection. The ambiguity itself feels meaningful. Heroes often stand between worlds, between mortal and divine, between ordinary and extraordinary. Theseus embodies that balance. Throughout his adventures, he demonstrates qualities Poseidon admires: strength, determination, courage, the willingness to confront danger directly. Yet he also reveals the limits of those qualities. Like many heroes, Theseus sometimes suffers from overconfidence, a trait his divine father understands all too well. You can imagine Poseidon observing from afar, watching victories unfold, watching mistakes unfold as well. Ancient myths rarely describe gods as detached observers. They remain emotionally invested. Their favorites matter to them. Their descendants matter. Their champions matter. Poseidon is no exception. One coastal tradition speaks of fishermen dreaming of a great trident rising from the sea whenever a hero faces a crucial decision. Whether such stories originated as religious experiences or symbolic storytelling remains impossible to know, yet they reveal how worshippers imagined divine involvement. Not always direct intervention, sometimes guidance, sometimes warning, sometimes presence. The distinction is important, because as Poseidon matures, his influence often becomes subtler, less focused on proving power, more focused on shaping outcomes. This shift appears in several myths, though never perfectly. Poseidon remains Poseidon. His temper still exists, his pride still exists, his passions remain intense. Growth does not erase personality, it adds perspective. Another hero connected to the sea god is Bellerophon. The traditions surrounding Bellerophon are complex and vary across regions, yet some accounts link Poseidon to the hero's extraordinary horse. Again, the ancient connection between Poseidon and horses appears, a connection older and stranger than many listeners expect. Historians continue debating its origins. Perhaps it reflects forgotten religious traditions. Perhaps symbolic associations developed gradually over centuries. Whatever the explanation, the image persists. The sea god remains tied to creatures representing freedom, speed, and untamed energy, qualities heroes often require. Yet not every encounter between Poseidon and heroes proves positive. Far from it. The story of Odysseus remains the most obvious example. There, the hero becomes an adversary. The relationship is defined by conflict rather than cooperation. And yet even that conflict shapes the hero profoundly. Without Poseidon's opposition, Odysseus's journey becomes a different story entirely. Shorter, simpler, less transformative. Ancient audiences likely recognize this. Challenges create growth. Obstacles create character. The sea god, whether intentionally or not, becomes a teacher. A harsh teacher, but a teacher nonetheless. One evening, according to a tradition preserved near an island sanctuary, a priest dreams of a fleet sailing through thick fog. The ships cannot see the stars. They cannot see the shore. They cannot even see one another. Then a distant sound echoes across the water. A conch shell. The sound guides them safely forward. The priests interpret the dream as a reminder. Divine guidance rarely removes difficulty. It provides direction within difficulty. The lesson suits Poseidon remarkably well. He does not eliminate uncertainty. He governs it. As generations pass, stories about heroes and Poseidon spread throughout the Greek world. Around campfires, inside temples, across marketplaces. A child hearing them might learn courage. A sailor might learn humility. A ruler might learn respect. The same myth offers different lessons to different listeners. That flexibility helps explain why the stories endure. They speak to many experiences simultaneously. Some researchers believe these myths also served practical cultural functions. Maritime societies depended upon courage and caution in equal measure. The stories reinforced both. Heroes ventured into danger. Heroes also respected forces larger than themselves. Poseidon represented those forces. The sea remained a place of opportunity. It also remained a place of risk. The balance never disappeared, and neither did the god. As centuries unfold, something interesting happens. Poseidon gradually becomes less defined by individual victories or defeats, less defined by specific rivalries, more defined by what he represents: the sea, power, uncertainty, movement, the journey itself. Heroes come and go, cities rise and fall, generations pass, yet the ocean remains. Every new hero eventually encounters the same horizon, the same waves, the same mysteries, and therefore, in a symbolic sense, the same god. The transformation is subtle, but profound. Poseidon no longer influences only specific lives. He influences the idea of adventure itself, the idea of venturing beyond what is known, the idea of confronting forces impossible to fully control. Perhaps that is why he remains so compelling. Not because he is perfect, not because he always makes wise choices, because he embodies a reality every human being eventually faces. The unknown. The sea continues its quiet rhythm beneath the stars. A distant ship disappears beyond the horizon. Another begins its journey home. And somewhere within those endless waters, the legacy of Poseidon continues expanding, far beyond the boundaries of any kingdom, far beyond the memory of any single hero, towards something even larger. For soon the story will move beyond individuals entirely, toward the deeper meanings hidden within the sea itself, toward what ancient people truly saw when they looked upon Poseidon, and perhaps what we still see today. The sea stretches endlessly before you. No ships disturb its surface tonight. No storms gather upon the horizon. Only moonlight, only water, only silence. You stand beside the ancient world as countless generations once did, gazing toward a horizon that refuses to reveal its secrets. And slowly you begin to understand something important. Poseidon was never only a god. He was an idea, a way of understanding something vast, something beautiful, something frightening, something impossible to fully control. The sea. For most people living in the modern world, oceans are familiar. Maps show every coastline. Satellites observe every major storm. Ships travel predictable routes. The unknown has retreated, at least partially. For the ancient Greeks, the experience was entirely different. The sea remained mysterious. Every voyage carried uncertainty. Beyond the horizon could lie opportunity, or disaster, or wonders no one had imagined. The ocean represented possibility itself, and wherever possibility exists, stories soon follow. Those stories gradually became Poseidon. You can imagine a young fisherman standing upon a rocky shore. The morning air is cool. The smell of salt lingers everywhere. Waves roll steadily against dark stone. Far away, seabirds disappear into the distance. The fisherman stares across the water. What does he see? Not merely a physical landscape. He sees livelihood, danger, adventure, hope, fear. The sea contains all of them, and so does Poseidon. This relationship helps explain why the sea god remains so important throughout Greek history. Many Olympians governed specific aspects of life. Athena influenced wisdom. Demeter influenced agriculture. Eras influenced warfare. Poseidon touched something broader, the boundary between certainty and uncertainty, the place where the known world ended. Ancient people encountered that boundary constantly. Merchants crossing unfamiliar waters, explorers seeking distant lands, families waiting for loved ones to return. Each experience reinforced the same reality. The sea mattered, and therefore the sea god mattered. One of the most fascinating aspects of Poseidon's mythology is how different communities understood him differently. Island populations often emphasized protection. Coastal cities emphasized prosperity. Regions affected by earthquakes emphasized fear. The same god appeared through multiple lenses. Historians continue studying these variations. Surviving evidence suggests local traditions frequently shaped worship practices. A fisherman and a king might pray to Poseidon for entirely different reasons. Yet both prayers reach the same deity. The complexity reveals something important. Poseidon was adaptable, not because his nature changed, because human needs changed. The sea could mean many things. So could its god. One evening, according to a tradition recorded near the Aegean coast, an elderly sailor tells a story to his grandchildren. He speaks of waters so calm they resembled polished marble. Then he describes storms so violent the sky seemed to disappear. The children ask which version of the sea is real. The sailor answers simply, both. The story survives because it captures a deeper truth. Human beings often seek simple categories. Good, bad, safe, dangerous. The sea resists such categories. Poseidon does as well. Ancient myths repeatedly return to this lesson. The sea god helps and harms, protects and punishes, creates and destroys. The contradictions remain inseparable. Perhaps that is why he feels surprisingly modern. Real life rarely fits simple categories either. As centuries pass, temples dedicated to Poseidon become gathering places not only for worship, but for identity. Communities define themselves through their relationship with the ocean. Festivals celebrate maritime success. Rituals seek protection. Stories preserve collective memory. The god becomes woven into culture itself. You can almost hear those festivals. Laughter, music, footsteps echoing through temple courtyards, the scent of incense mixing with sea air, children listening to stories about heroes and monsters, elders remembering voyages from long ago. In such moments, Poseidon feels close, not distant, not abstract, part of daily life. Archaeological discoveries continue revealing traces of these traditions. Temple ruins, offerings, inscribed dedications, fragments of forgotten prayers. Each discovery adds another piece to the picture. Not a complete picture, that remains impossible, but enough to glimpse how deeply the sea god shaped ancient imagination. Some researchers believe Poseidon's popularity reflects more than religious devotion. They suggest he represented humanity's relationship with uncertainty itself. The theory is difficult to prove, yet it carries intuitive appeal. After all, uncertainty appears everywhere in his myths. The unpredictable sea, the sudden earthquake, the unexpected storm, the shifting fortunes of heroes. Poseidon stands at the center of them all. One dream tradition from a coastal sanctuary describes worshippers seeing a vast ocean beneath a star-filled sky. The dreamers sail toward the horizon, but never reach it. Instead, the horizon moves with them. Ancient interpreters considered the dream sacred. The meaning remains debated. Perhaps it symbolized endless exploration, perhaps endless mystery, perhaps both. The image feels appropriate. No matter how far humans travel, some mysteries remain. The horizon always stays ahead. Poseidon becomes guardian of that horizon, not merely the physical one, the symbolic one as well, the place where knowledge ends and possibility begins. As the centuries unfold, this symbolism grows stronger. Poets write about it. Artists depict it. Travelers carry it across distant regions. The sea god evolves beyond individual myths, beyond individual temples, into an enduring cultural symbol. And symbols possess remarkable longevity. Long after specific rituals fade, long after particular cities decline, the symbol remains. The ocean still inspires wonder. The ocean still inspires fear. The ocean still reminds people of forces larger than themselves. And therefore, in a sense, Poseidon remains present. Not literally, symbolically, emotionally, imaginatively. The sea continues speaking his language. Moonlight upon waves, storms beyond the horizon, the cry of seabirds over distant water, the feeling of standing before something vast, something ancient, something alive. The Greeks recognized those experiences. They gave them a name, Poseidon. Tonight, as the waves move gently beneath the stars, another question begins to emerge. What did the ancient Greeks truly believe when they prayed to him? Beyond the myths, beyond the stories, beyond the symbols, what deeper meaning did they find within the Lord of the Sea? The answer waits among forgotten temples and fading traditions, and it reveals a side of Poseidon few modern listeners ever encounter. The sea is sleeping tonight. Only the gentlest waves touch the shore. The wind has fallen silent. Above, countless stars fill the heavens, their reflections scattered across the dark water like fragments of silver. You stand beside an ancient temple. The sacred fire burns low. The scent of incense drifts through cool night air. The voices of worshippers have faded. Only quiet remains. And in that quiet, you begin asking a deeper question. Not what Poseidon did, but what Poseidon meant. Because mythology is never only a collection of stories. It is also a collection of ideas, a way ancient people understood themselves and the world around them. The Greeks did not simply tell stories about Poseidon because they enjoyed entertainment. They told those stories because the sea mattered, because earthquakes mattered, because uncertainty mattered, and because they needed a language capable of describing experiences larger than human understanding. Poseidon became part of that language. You can imagine a sailor standing alone upon a deck at night. The shore has vanished. The stars seem impossibly distant. The ocean stretches endlessly in every direction. The sailor feels small, very small. Ancient people knew this feeling intimately. Modern technology often shields us from it. The Greeks encountered it regularly. When they looked into the sea, they confronted something beyond their control. And within that confrontation, many found Poseidon, not merely as a supernatural ruler, as a symbol of reality itself, a reality that could not be negotiated with, only respected. One of the most interesting discoveries made by historians concerns the age of Poseidon's worship. Some surviving evidence suggests traditions associated with him may reach back into very early periods of Greek history, possibly even before some of the more familiar Olympian myths fully developed. The details remain debated. Archaeology rarely provides complete answers. Fragments survive, questions remain. Yet the possibility is fascinating, because it suggests that Poseidon may represent something deeply rooted within the ancient imagination, something older than individual stories, something connected to the landscape itself. The sea existed before cities, before kingdoms, before written language. The sea was already there, and in many ways Poseidon feels similarly ancient. Even among the Olympians, one evening, according to a temple tradition preserved in fragments, a young priest asks an elder why Poseidon inspires both love and fear. The elder supposedly responds with a simple question: "Do you love the sea?" The young priest answers yes. "Do you fear the sea?" Again the answer is yes. The elder smiles. The lesson requires no further explanation. The story survives because it captures something essential. The Greeks did not necessarily view love and fear as opposites. Some forces deserved both. The ocean, the gods, fate itself. Poseidon belongs within that category. Ancient worship often reflected this balance. Offerings sought favor, rituals acknowledged danger, prayers expressed gratitude and caution. At the same time, the relationship feels surprisingly mature, not blind devotion, not constant terror. Respect, a recognition of power without pretending complete understanding. Many scholars believe this attitude helps explain Poseidon's enduring popularity. He represented realities people genuinely encountered: storms, earthquakes, voyages, risk. His mythology remained grounded in lived experience. One particularly intriguing theory concerns Poseidon's connection to horses. As you have seen throughout his story, the association appears repeatedly. Ancient myths credit him with creating the first horse. Several important sanctuaries connect him with equestrian traditions. Historians continue debating the origin of this relationship. Some researchers believe it preserves traces of extremely old religious practices. Others argue the symbolism developed gradually over time. No consensus exists, and perhaps none ever will. The mystery remains. Yet regardless of its origin, the symbolism feels appropriate. Horses represent movement, energy, freedom, power difficult to contain. The same qualities define the sea. The same qualities define Poseidon. Ancient people seem to have recognized the connection instinctively. Another layer of meaning emerges through earthquakes. Modern science explains tectonic movement. The Greeks possessed no such framework. Yet they still observed patterns. They noticed unpredictability. They noticed consequences. They noticed how quickly stability could disappear. Poseidon became their explanation. More importantly, he became their reminder. Nothing remains completely secure. The lesson extends beyond geology. Cities rise and fall. Fortunes change. Lives transform. The Earthshaker symbolizes all of it. Not merely physical earthquakes, existential ones, moments when familiar foundations suddenly shift. The symbolism remains powerful even now. One dream tradition from a sanctuary near the coast describes worshippers seeing a trident planted in the earth. Its 3 points stretch upward toward the stars. One point touches the sea, one touches the land, one touches the sky. Ancient interpreters disagreed about the meaning. Some saw cosmic balance, others saw divine authority. Still others viewed it as a symbol connecting different realms of existence. The disagreement itself is revealing. Important symbols rarely possess only one interpretation. They invite reflection. Poseidon's mythology functions similarly. Every generation discovers something different within it. The warrior sees strength. The sailor sees uncertainty. The ruler sees power. The philosopher sees complexity. The myths remain alive because they accommodate all of these perspectives. As centuries pass, Greek religion evolves. Political systems change. Empires rise. New ideas emerge. Yet Poseidon endures, partly because the realities he represents endure. The sea remains. Storms remain. Human uncertainty remains. The horizon remains. Ancient temples may crumble. The underlying experiences survive. Perhaps that is why Poseidon feels strangely timeless. Not because every myth remains relevant, because the emotions beneath the myths remain relevant. Wonder, fear, ambition, pride, responsibility, the desire to understand forces larger than oneself. These experiences transcend eras. The Greeks recognized them. So do we. The sacred fire beside the temple burns lower now. The stars wheel slowly overhead. The sea continues its endless rhythm against the shore. And somewhere within that rhythm, the ancient world still whispers its understanding. Poseidon was never merely the god of the sea. He was the god of humanity's encounter with the unknown, the god of powerful forces beyond complete control, the god of horizons that never stop moving away. Yet even horizons eventually fade into memory. And the age of the gods itself is beginning to change. For the final chapters of Poseidon's story are approaching. The temples will grow quieter. The old prayers will become less common. The world will move forward. But the sea will remember. The night is quiet. Not empty, not silent. Simply quiet. The kind of quiet that arrives after a long journey. The sea moves gently beneath the stars. Small waves touch the shoreline and retreat. The moon hangs low over the horizon, casting pale light across the water. You stand at the edge of an ending, not the end of Poseidon. Gods do not vanish so easily. Rather the end of an age, the end of a world that once felt eternal. For centuries, the people of Greece had looked toward the sea and thought of Poseidon. They had climbed temple steps carrying offerings. They had whispered prayers before dangerous voyages. They had interpreted storms, earthquakes, and changing tides through the language of myth. The relationship had become part of daily life, part of memory, part of identity. Yet history possesses a power mythology knows well. Everything changes, even the most enduring traditions. You can imagine a harbor many generations after the great age of heroes. The ships are still there. The fishermen are still there. The sea remains unchanged. Yet something feels different. The stories are becoming older. The voices that tell them are becoming fewer. Children still hear the names of the gods, but they hear other stories as well. New philosophies, new ideas, new ways of understanding the world. The old myths do not disappear. They simply begin sharing space with other explanations. This transformation unfolds slowly. So slowly that no single generation notices its full extent. Ancient sanctuaries remain active. Festivals continue. Priests tend sacred fires. Offerings accumulate upon stone altars. Yet beneath the surface, currents are shifting, much like the sea itself. Historians studying ancient religion often emphasize this gradual process. Religious change rarely occurs all at once. Beliefs overlap, traditions coexist. Old symbols acquire new meanings. The transition feels less like a door closing, more like daylight slowly fading into evening. Poseidon's story follows this pattern. The temples continue standing. The waves continue rolling toward shore. The myths continue being told. Yet the world around them evolves. One evening, according to a tradition preserved in later writings, an old priest sits beside a coastal sanctuary, watching the sunset. The temple remains beautiful. The sea remains beautiful. Everything appears unchanged. Yet the priest senses time moving. Generations have passed before his eyes. Children became adults. Adults became elders. Elders became memories. The priest supposedly asks a simple question. Will the sea remember when we are gone? The question lingers because it reaches beyond religion, beyond mythology, toward mortality itself. Poseidon has always existed in tension with mortality. Unlike humans, he does not age. Unlike humans, he does not die. Yet many things connected to him do. Cities, ships, empires, families, even temples. The contrast becomes increasingly visible during these later centuries. One city prospers, another declines. One harbor fills with trade, another falls silent. The sea witnesses all of it. So does the sea god. Ancient storytellers occasionally reflected upon this difference. Their myths were not only about immortality, they were also about change. And no figure embodies that paradox more clearly than Poseidon, the ruler of something ancient, watching countless temporary things pass by. Archaeological discoveries offer glimpses of this process. Broken temple columns, weathered inscriptions, fragments of forgotten dedications. Each piece tells part of a story, not merely of worship, of time. The sea winds that once carried prayers continue blowing across those ruins today. The waves continue striking the same coastlines. Nature endures, human institutions change. Poseidon stands symbolically at the meeting point between those realities. One dream tradition from a sanctuary near the Aegean describes worshippers seeing an empty temple beside the sea. The altar remains. The columns remain. The sacred fire has gone out. Yet outside the waves continue their endless rhythm. Ancient interpreters debated the dream's meaning. Some saw loss, others saw continuity. Perhaps both interpretations are correct. Human rituals may fade. The experiences that inspired them often remain. The sea still inspires awe. The sea still inspires humility. The sea still reminds people of their limitations. And therefore, in a sense, Poseidon survives. Not necessarily through formal worship, through memory, through symbolism, through imagination. This transformation fascinates many modern researchers. Why do some mythological figures remain culturally powerful long after active belief declines? No single answer exists. Yet Poseidon's case offers clues. He remains connected to experiences that never disappear. Storms, oceans, journeys, uncertainty. Human beings continue encountering these realities. And whenever they do, echoes of the sea god remain nearby. Perhaps not consciously, but symbolically. One sailor studies dark clouds gathering on the horizon. Another stands beside a cliff watching waves crash below. A traveler crosses an unfamiliar ocean. A child stares out toward the endless water for the first time. The emotions are familiar. Wonder, respect, curiosity, a slight trace of fear. The same emotions ancient Greeks once carried into Poseidon's temples. The language changes. The experience endures. As the centuries continue passing, the Olympian gods gradually move from religion into literature, from literature into art, from art into cultural memory. Their influence changes form. It does not vanish. Poets preserve them. Artists depict them. Scholars analyze them. Storytellers reinvent them. Poseidon adapts remarkably well to this transition. Perhaps because he was always larger than any single interpretation. Sea god, earthshaker, protector, destroyer, father, rival, symbol. The roles overlap endlessly. No single version captures him completely. And perhaps that incompleteness explains his longevity. Every generation discovers a different Poseidon. The sea continues breathing beneath the moon. The old temples grow quieter. The prayers become rarer. The myths become older. Yet none of it feels entirely like an ending, because the ocean itself remains. The waves still move toward distant shores. The tides still rise and fall. The horizon still invites questions. And somewhere within those eternal rhythms, the memory of Poseidon continues. Waiting, patient, unfinished, for one final reflection remains, one final mystery, one final answer to the question that began this journey. Why did Poseidon never become King of Olympus? And perhaps more importantly, why does it no longer matter? The sea is peaceful tonight. No storm clouds gather above the horizon. No earthquakes disturb the earth below. No ships struggle against dangerous winds. Only moonlight, only water, only the slow, steady rhythm of waves meeting the shore. You stand beside the sea one final time. The journey has been long. Together you have followed Poseidon from hidden infancy to immortal legacy. You watched him survive the fear of Cronus. You watched him fight beside his brothers during the Titan War. You watched him claim the oceans as his kingdom. You witnessed his triumphs, his disappointments, his rivalries, his loves, his mistakes. And through it all, one question followed him like a distant current beneath the waves. Why did Poseidon never become king of Olympus? At the beginning of this story, the question seemed enormous, perhaps even tragic. A powerful god denied the highest throne, a ruler forever standing beside another ruler, a brother forever compared to another brother. Yet now, after walking beside him through an entire lifetime, the question feels different. Because the answer is not found in what Poseidon lacked. It is found in what he became. Ancient myths rarely offer simple lessons. They are too human for that. Too complicated. Too honest. But occasionally a pattern emerges. And the pattern within Poseidon's life is clear. Again and again he seeks recognition. Again and again he compares himself to Zeus. Again and again he measures his worth against a crown he does not possess. The comparison brings frustration, disappointment, even rebellion. Yet none of those moments define him in the end. What defines him is something larger. Responsibility. The sea was never a consolation prize. The sea was never a lesser kingdom. The sea was the world itself. It connected distant lands, fed countless communities, carried heroes toward destiny, and reminded humanity that some forces remain beyond complete control. Poseidon did not rule Olympus. He ruled horizons. He ruled journeys. He ruled uncertainty. And those things may have mattered even more. Imagine for a moment the view from Olympus. The marble halls, the golden thrones, the sacred fires, the mountain peaks rising above the clouds, magnificent, yet limited. Now imagine the view from Poseidon's kingdom. Every ocean, every coastline, every island, every harbor, every ship sailing beneath the stars. The kingdom never ends. The boundaries cannot be seen. The horizon always continues farther. Perhaps fate understood something Poseidon needed many years to learn. Some rulers belong upon thrones. Others belong within the world itself. Zeus governs from above. Poseidon moves through everything below. One remains at the center. The other reaches everywhere. The distinction changes how you understand the story. The sea god did not fail to become king. He became something else. Something impossible to confine within a palace. Ancient worshippers seem to have sensed this. Even in regions where Zeus held supreme authority, Poseidon remained essential. The sea could not be ignored. The tides could not be ignored. The storms could not be ignored, and therefore neither could the god associated with them. One old tradition tells of a sailor approaching an elderly priest before a voyage. The sailor asks which god possesses the greatest power. The priest points toward the horizon. "Tell me," he says, "where does the sea end?" The sailor cannot answer. The priest smiles. Neither can anyone else. The story survives because it captures something profound. Greatness is not always measured by rank. Sometimes it is measured by reach, by influence, by endurance. Poseidon's influence endures, even now, not because people still build temples in his honor, because the experiences he represents remain universal. The feeling of standing before something vast, the feeling of confronting uncertainty, the feeling of respecting forces larger than oneself. Every generation encounters those moments. Every generation searches for language capable of describing them. The Greeks found that language in Poseidon, and perhaps that is why his memory continues. Historians still study him. Artists still depict him. Writers still retell his stories. Children still hear his name. The sea god survives not through worship, through imagination, through symbolism, through the enduring power of myth. Far below the surface of the water, the ancient palace remains, at least in story. Coral halls, shimmering columns, soft light filtering through endless blue, and somewhere within those halls sits the Lord of the Sea. Not jealous, not angry, not longing for another throne, simply watching the tides, watching the world, watching time itself pass like water flowing through open hands. The older Poseidon feels different from the younger one, not weaker, wiser. He has learned what storms eventually teach every sailor. Control is limited. Power is temporary. The horizon always remains beyond reach, yet the journey still matters. Perhaps that is the deepest lesson hidden within his life. Not the pursuit of kingship, the acceptance of purpose, the discovery that destiny does not always resemble ambition. Sometimes destiny asks us to become what we are rather than what we envy. The sea understood this long before Poseidon did. The waves never attempt to become mountains. The tides never attempt to become stars. They simply move according to their nature, and in doing so they become magnificent. The moon is lower now. The stars shine softly above the water. The night grows quieter. You listen to the distant rhythm of waves upon the shore. The same rhythm sailors heard thousands of years ago. The same rhythm priests heard beside ancient temples. the same rhythm that inspired stories, prayers, dreams, and myths. Somewhere beyond the horizon, unseen currents continue their endless journey. They move through darkness, through moonlight, through time itself. And perhaps, if you listen carefully, they still carry the memory of Poseidon, not as a king who never ruled Olympus, but as the eternal lord of the sea, the god of horizons, the keeper of storms, the earth shaker, the father of heroes and monsters, the ruler of a kingdom too vast for any throne. And as the waves continue their gentle song beneath the stars, his story drifts quietly into the night, like the sea itself, endless, ancient, and at peace.